a dominator of all sorts of matchups, and a pretty deft hand in team fights nowadays, thanks to the prominence of the Blink Meteor Hammer metagame. It's one of those things that comes up a lot, where a hero, sort of sits in the metagame for a little bit of a while and, doesn't do much of anything. But then with even a subtle change, not the hero directly, but the items that it likes to buy up, it can be pushed forward into the meta. And just because it seems as though we may have missed a little bit of that intro, while we get it further underway into the draft, I'd like to apologise for the technical difficulties. Teething problems. But what isn't a teething problem is this league, the Australian University Esports League, Dota 2 Season 1 for this year, for 2021, but definitely not the first season. This tournament's been going strong for a while now. I was very glad to cast it last season, and it brings some of the greatest university talent forward in the game of Dota 2. It's obviously a pretty competitive scene, and this is a great opportunity for players to not only play in different team combinations, but to break out. Anyone can enter, any university student is allowed to enter the league. So, it's a land of opportunities for these players who are seeing tee off tonight as we cast from this replay from week 2. So we're looking forward to that, but thanks, of course, to our sponsors, our bubble tea partner Chatime, our monitor partner AOC, and, of course, Indomie and Rig, our noodle and headset partners, respectively. I'm sure we'll have more time to tell you about them. But, having quickly recapped the recap, we got to get back to the draft. Shadow Shaman and Enigma picked up. That's immediately setting the tone of this draft from the UC Stars. Obviously, leaving things somewhat open. This could be the two supports, or it could be a support and a core. Enigma, quite flexible in how he's played. And, I mean, even Shadow Shaman could ostensibly be a mid, right? Like, that's the fun thing about this university league, is that you often have a lot of flexibility in how you run your draft, even more so than we would normally dare to see in the competitive scene. Players are a little bit less set in their ways, maybe the stakes are not as high, or people are just having fun, and the skill gap is another thing, right? Like, normally you would expect in a competitive game that even in a 10 players in the match, that the top player and the bottom player aren't that far apart, with some notable exceptions. But in the University League, because these teams are just recruited from the universities around the players, not all the players are on quite an equal skill level. They're all good, but within Dota, like, the bell curve really slides off to a fine point, and some of these, like, truly special players who can compete on an international level, well, they can kind of have their way with the game in really whatever character and role they'd like. Like this Rubik, for instance, I could easily see this being a mid pickup for ANU Esports. Not normally where we would see it, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility, and that's what makes a league like this so exciting. So, having also seen the Beastmaster, though, that one we know where that's going. That's the offlane pick. Again, one of the stronger picks of this entire tournament, or of this entire metagame. It just dominates the offlane against almost all carries, especially melee carries who can't afford to last hit because they're being driven back by the boar summons. Any secondary hero in the lane, even a softer support like Rubik in the laning phase, can easily pick up kills. And then once you hit level 6 with a fast Necrobook, the Beastmaster can easily gank these heroes way off the map. Enigma, your hero likes to be farming up in the jungle for a little while, or relatively static in the lane, and kind of relies on the threat of Black Hole and the just presence of the Eidolons to protect him while he does so. Beastmaster is not afraid of this stuff, and even later in the game when Enigma can threaten to pick up a BKB and kind of become the be-all end-all teamfight hero, having a BKB piercing stun on your very first pick in the Beastmaster is a huge asset. So, great picking by ANU Esports to react to the UC Stars, but now we're well into our second banning phase. We've removed out, not only, obviously, Morphling was deleted from the pool earlier, perhaps a respect ban. If you happen to know what someone on ANU Esports loves to pick up, you can remove the Morphling early on, just to ensure they don't get their hands on it. And then we have Lion and Wyvern. 2 more supports being removed. So I'm not sure whether they just believe this Rubik to actually be the mid pick, or they are trying to remove the 5th position hero. I mean, both sort of apply at once. But by removing Lion and Wyvern, they're removing strong disables, especially in Wyvern's case, another potential BKB piercer to cancel out the Enigma. So, you can still go for that late game BKB play on Enigma. All it takes is, one Blink Hex by the Shadow Shaman to take Beastmaster out of the fight at the appropriate time. Or indeed a well-placed Black Hole that catches the Beastmaster. He is a melee hero. And Enigma suddenly has no trouble decimating your entire team with a refresher combo. But, the more of those picks you're allowed to pick up, the more likely it is that you'll be able to find a free hero when the black hole goes down who's capable of interrupting it, even through the BKB. So, now that we're removing more heroes on the ANU side, they've taken out the Puck and the Riki. So, they hate invisibility, and they hate int mid laners, and apparently they hate Axe, which is it's kind of an interesting call. Axe hasn't really been a hero in the metagame, unlike all of these other picks so far. Wyvern, Oracle, very strong saving supports, very powerful pickups, if you're going to go for Protect 1, and in general, the OD, or the Puck, or the Clinks, all very powerful laning heroes who can snowball and take over the game. Morphling is a carry that sort of blanks a lot of offlaners, and in particular doesn't seem like he'd be harassed too much by Enigma on account of his high mobility and high armor in the early levels. But the Axe as a counter to BKB using carries, and generally kind of like a riff on the same theme as Enigma, AoE, BKB, piercing disables rule these late game team fights, and Axe provides a strong laning presence, transitioning into that form of initiation later on. It just hasn't been the name of the game in Dota 2 for a little while, and I can only imagine it's seen as sort of a counter to Beastmaster here, since Axe's spin tends to punish the summon army. But interesting to say ANU remove it. It could, again, be a respect ban. Whenever you see a sort of funky ban or pick like that, you have to consider that there's more to the context of this draft than just the current understanding that teams broadly have of Dota 2 and what's strong on the patch. Now, in terms of heroes that are strong on the patch, Pangolier has been just carving things up. Basically, in all games, there's currently a major live in Singapore right now, our first since the COVID break, and Pangolier has been one of the most hotly contested offlaners out there. So this does seemingly cement the Enigma into a support position, although it could also be a 4-position Pangolier. The only issue here is that unlike Enigma, who can drop back and farm the jungle really at any stage and in any role, Pangolier is a hero who, while he's not the strongest laner, he definitely needs to lane for the first 3 to 5 levels. He really does rely entirely on the Swashbuckle, his Q spell, for not only all laning functions, but most of his creep farming ability. And while you can sort of soak XP and play around in the lane or rely on your support to shield you while you get those levels, if you have to jungle early or roam early on, you are really putting a lot of pressure on yourself to find XP at key moments. Top support players can do this, but it is a lot of pressure to put on someone. So I expect we'll see that as a core. Juggernaut, obviously a core, the top carry of the patch, if Ursa isn't. So the two probably strongest carry heroes on this patch have been picked up, one by each team. At this late stage in the draft, I mean, it's clear when the bans don't focus on carries that they're going to be available, and each team respectively kind of locks that in, having assessed that the game is fine. There's none of the scant few counters for either of these picks in the game, and it makes the Axe ban from ANU even more interesting, because Ursa tends to be the hero that beats up Axe out of all the melee carries, and a lot of any other offlaner that tries to trade blows with melee carries has a nasty surprise laning up against the Ursa there. Those Fury swipes, the stacking damage bonus per hit, is devastating to that kind of game plan. But, having banned it out, you don't always know that you're going to get the Ursa pick. It's possible the UC Stars could have gone for it, and so it's, I suppose, nice. It's nice to ban out the Axe unless you're going to go for a different carry pick. But again, some interesting drafting. These aren't necessarily highly competitive teams, and while I'm sure that some of the teams will be using the drafting experience of their more high-level competitive players in this university league, it's not true that all of them will be, right? So we have to take these drafts with a grain of salt. Now we see some really key mid-hero bans coming out, as both teams have left that pick till last, as is fairly typical. You want to try and secure the best possible matchup in that 1v1, showdown between mid laners. Not only because obviously the matchup has the most effect when the extra heroes on the current patch at least are less likely to be there interfering, but also because, the mid laners, whoever wins that duel is going to have the chance to snowball their lead and heavily impact the other lanes around the map. It is still kind of the all-star position of Dota 2, even after all of these years. So Templar Assassin, Ember Spirit, Razor, Void Spirit, some of the most powerful and polarizing mids are removed. And now we have to see who UC Stars and ANU respectively had to settle for. UC Stars, they're in the unenviable position of picking their mid laner first, so ANU, with the ultimate final pick of the draft, will be able to counterpick this Storm Spirit. The Storm Spirit, though, it does create a difficult picture for ANU, right? Like, especially since a lot of their damage seemingly is coming from this Ursa, and a lot of their lockdown and the Jakiro and Rubik is quite positioning dependent. These are slow-moving support heroes. Rubik will buy a blink if he can, but only has kind of a soft disable. Jakiro almost never buys a blink, or at least not an early blink, and relies on these slow-forming Ice Path to stun heroes. And you're up against Juggernaut, Pangolier, and Storm Spirit, all of whom can, quickly move out of the way of these damaging and stunning spells, or become magic immune, or both. It leads me to believe that it's going to be very difficult for this Ursa to pick up kills, even with the Beastmaster Raw to set things up, especially when you have to consider that if you overextend chasing those cores, both of these supports provide excellent counter initiation. And ANU, it felt like they did need something to shake up the draft after that pick, and if this is a mid Skywrath Mage, that's definitely a shake up. It could also just be the mid Rubik, but either of those are very interesting niche picks focused on the early game, focused on team fighting and control, sort of around the 20-minute mark, and in the Skywrath's case in particular, big magical damage. The silence, the instant cast, no travel time silence the Skywrath Mage provides can be key to locking down Storm, Pango, and Jug, even cancelling the Enigma's Black Hole at range, of course. It's sort of like Orchid is the most popular item seemingly to go for on mid laners currently of all stripes, so why not pick a mid laner who comes with a built-in Orchid? I like the idea. I love Clean Cole is going to be playing that for ANU Esports, so I'm not sure. That's not quite the captain's pick. That's Chestnut will be manning up the Beastmaster on the off lane. But, it's certainly going to have to be a starring performance out of this Skywrath Mage. Very fragile hero, very punishing of any mistakes, but potentially the kind of hero that can snowball the game and really make the enemy team have a bad time if you let them get away with it. So, as we get into game, once again, have to thank all our sponsors, of course, Indomie, Chatime, RIG or RIG, and AOC Monitors. They're the ones who are bringing you this experience and ensuring that this Uni League continues to exist season after season to allow all university players the opportunity to test themselves against, the upper echelons of esports competition, maybe even break into the scene at large. So, of course, we have an early pause. We can skip this. It is a replay cast. I must remind you this game occurred a couple of days ago. But we'll quickly take the chance to check out these items. So this does look like a mid-Skywrath. He's got the Observer Ward, which is critical for seeing the enemy high ground, so that you'll have the chance to actually target Storm with your Arcane Bolt at level 1 harassment or level 2 harassment's potentially a huge threat for Lucy Drop on the Storm Spirit. Only has a meager amount of removal. Of course, going to be going for that early bottle as the mid lane, and Storm should have excellent rune control over Skywrath once that bottle is obtained. But the question is, can you actually survive long enough to make 650 gold against an opponent with this much front-loaded damage in the laning phase? It might be up to some of the supports. Meanwhile, we have got the offlane. It looks like offlane core Pangolier with that Quelling Blade from Pacifist. We're going to be seeing Noodle on the Shadow Shaman, definitely supporting here. Got the extra salve for his carry, good job. And Curacao on the Juggernaut, pretty typical start items. This Enigma does appear to be supporting the offlane. We've got the Sage's Mask. May see the Enigma drop back into the jungle after the first couple of levels, but as I mentioned, the early levels for Pangolier are really important, and he does kind of need a little bit of help getting them, especially against a hero as fearsome as Ursa. It's haha, smiley face, rocking the Ursa Bear. We're going to have Keith, I'm just going to call him Keith, on the Rubik here, all turned up, has the Fairy Fire to supplement Rubik's meager early attack damage. Meanwhile, we've got Jay on the Jakiro. This is more likely to be the safe lane support just because of the brutal combination of Jakiro and Ursa. Jakiro already a very difficult hero to all in on in the early game in laning phase due to just some superior stats. Like compare that 780 starting hit points to Rubik, 640. It doesn't really let up in 3 starting armor. So like the Jakiro pick plus the Ursa makes the lane phase completely dominant. And as we move into the game, we're going to be seeing whether or not this top lane can hold up against the safe lane. I'm really curious. There's going to be a fight over the bounty runes at top lane. Looks like Lucy Drop might be the worse for wear after this, trying to waddle back to the tier 2 tower, but there's just too much damage and slow. I was talking about... actually, there is a return kill on Haha's Ursa, as Kurokau gets there just in time, and Nadul as well, applying the burst damage from Aether Shock, one of the highest damage level 1 nukes in the game. They will lose their bounty rune. I'm assuming that, yes, Chestnut on the bottom lane with the Beastmaster will be making up for that. Actually, no, sorry, that's the Dire. So this is potentially the Dire picking up 3 or 4 bounties. It's actually the Enigma here Apologies, I don't understand those characters. I'm not even going to try the name, but Enigma player here for the side of the Radiant. Who's the Radiant? We've got the UC Stars on the Radiant here. Their Enigma player sneakily went over and kind of risked his life a little bit to pick up that bounty rune, but it did pay off. That's their only gold from those initial runes, and the first blood being given away is a pretty brutal start, and it just shows the potential that this early game slow from Jakiro plus damage output from Ursa can achieve. This is definitely going to be a defensive lane here in the off lane for the UC Stars as they focus on getting some levels up on Pacifist, and then once this disarm proc from Lucky Shot is online, then you can afford to play a little bit more aggressively, especially once you have levels in Swashbuckle. But you can see here, when it's a 20-second cooldown, and you rely on this spell for everything from lasting the range creep, to harassing and trading with enemy supports, to evading initiations from Ursa once this Earth Shock sees levels, you really can't afford to be too proactive in utilizing it. You really have to try and just avoid the worst case scenario and hold it up as an escape. So the Dire were initially trialing the supports out there, trusting the Chestnut Beastmaster to get it done 1v1, and it is true that, you know, Juggernaut, as strong as the hero is right now, can struggle in the early minutes against a Beastmaster. Just too tanky to really be spun on early game, and the constant safe harassment from the Beastmaster summons can weigh on the Juggernaut before the healing ward is ready. As we see here, this is the role of the Enigma, actually, allowing Pacifist to get aggressive very early on, and there we see the Lucky Shot proc. That's sort of the foundation of this lane. The Enigmas split in time. The summons are going to pound Jay's Jakiro, really, you know, punishing that intervention and securing a strong trade for the Radiant. So that's a good start to their lane, or a good way to bounce back from the first blood. Overall, though, last hits and denies pretty even across the board. I think that even laning phase benefits the Radiant here, more broadly. The Dire are looking at an earlier timing, Ursa just coming online and peaking earlier than Jug, although both can go late game, assuming Ursa does go for the sort of modern Battle Fury build. And, you know, the power of the late game combination between these two supports and their mobile, hard to pin down cores, it's the kind of team that's much easier to play than it is to play against, and that tends to be a very big factor in deciding chaotic late game team fights. I wanted to also focus on the mid lane. Like I said at the start, this is a really early level focused lane, and we're about to see this showdown to the death here. In fact, despite all I said about I Love Clean Cole's potential for kills as the Storm Spirit, just ends up getting a little bit baited. Has the wand there, has the stick there early, but Lucy Drop had completed the wand before going back to the bottle. So identifying that Skarath wanted to spam down the lane with that Q at level 1, picked up the upgraded magic stick, and those extra hit points and mana that were obtained by the Skarath casting lots of spells actually completely decided that level 1 fight, or the first kill fight in the mid lane. That's going to be something that probably has massive implications going all the way through the rest of this game, because as much as Skarath is a snowball hero, so too is Storm. Maybe a thunderball hero would be more appropriate. We finally start to see things calm down a little, as Storm obviously had to go back to base, but Lucy Drop, now armed with that bottle, is through, it feels like, the hardest part of this lane, at least until Skarath hits level 6 and gets some levels in the silence. Maybe at that point you have to start respecting the potential for a gank. Meanwhile, at bottom lane, we can see Kurakal and this Juggernaut heavily pushing the lane up into the tower, not fearing any sort of actual kill threat from this lane prior to level 6, thanks to Rubik's relatively low damage, and of course, Juggernaut's just incredibly powerful laning kit. And it seems like they were hoping that push in was going to rebound the lane back to Juggernaut's tower, because Keith has seemingly blocked up these camps, or actually the Radiant themselves have blocked the pull camp here, the off-lane pull camp. And that means they need to rely on other methods to get the creep equilibrium back in a safe spot for Kurakal. But at least they have a few levels to do it before that roar is online. So we see that a spin down bottom. Looks like it was just to secure some creeps. So yeah, overall passive lanes, not much stacking getting done. We do see Keith on the Rubik begin to roam around now, which is, again, interesting. This is not the hero that you necessarily want to roam a lot on. Another very level-dependent support. That level 6 spell steal is very important to have early on, because it tends to be in those early game fights when Rubik's able to actually, you know, freely participate, steal spells, maybe pick up some ultimates before people realize that spell steal is itself available. And the levels in gold you acquire there by fighting and not dying before they get really dangerous for you. Actually, speaking of dangerous, Chestnut might get spun down here. Kurakal has just enough damage. The Fairy Fire and the lift from Keith are going to unite to save the life of Chestnut, and maybe can they get much punishment back? It doesn't seem like there'd be kill potential here with Keith out of mana and Chestnut out of health. Especially since Kurakal comes up to patrol the lane and shield his carry, so it ends up just being a bit of a trade. Likewise, Pacifist in the top lane, limping back towards his tower, but still no further kills.
Stupendous.
So So we see the JJ Kira actually, Pacifist very curiously tries to harass with the Q, or maybe just accept his fate as Noodle also goes down, so some unseemly deaths for the Radiant there. That Pangolier death in particular was completely preventable. I don't understand, if you have the Swashbuckle to harass there, you equally have the Swashbuckle to get away from the creeps. Maybe just not expecting Jay to turn and fire with the Breathe Fire so decisively, but with that Pangolier being so low, it's an easy decision to take the kill. And in fact, we miss another kill in the mid lane, so Lucy Drop is currently the spot of bright hope for the Radiant, killing off I Love Clean Coal a second time. The Skywrath is dominating in the last hits a little bit, or at least leading in them, but at this point when you've died twice, it doesn't really make up for the deficit. And with the Storm being the first player on the map to hit level 6 and already nearly level 7, that bodes well for the Radiant, right? Like, the thing about playing a greedy lineup like this is that as long as you have at least one hero who feels strong, who is difficult for the enemy to kill, you tend to be able to lean on that hero and the threat of them joining fights to discourage all-out aggression from the opposition. Like, you know, this ward's a little bit aggressive, but it would be hard to see the Dire make a fully aggressive move up into the Radiant jungle to cut off Juggernaut's farm post landing phase if they know that Lucy Drop is able to ball in with an Orchid or an early, you know, Treads Kaya, just a couple of items, and threaten their lives. Whereas if you lose all those lanes or those cores aren't in fighting shape, then there's really nothing to stop them just, you know, taking their chances. And speaking of taking their chances, Chestnut is going to be chancing death again at the bottom lane. It's a great shackle from Noodle. Kurosawa might go down now, but at least they got the kill first. It is a great play by the Beastmaster board. Not sure, yeah, it doesn't look like Aether Shock was available, so unfortunately, no way to finish off that summon. But at least they're able to commit the Juggernaut spin and ensure the XP goes in favor of their carry. And now we see Lucy Drop. I talked about getting involved. Doesn't wait to react to an aggressive move from the Dire. Gets aggressive himself with a double damage rune on top. This is going to be a very easy double kill. Classic Storm Spirit play. One of the best users of runes and Aegis and other temporary buffs in Dota 2, of course. Even has this pull camp stacked to mop things up. Just a little bit of tax on the lane. Maybe that was something Pacifist was hoping to catch back up with, but, you know, you just got to participate in a double kill, so, you know, thank you mid laner and be happy they don't tax you for more creeps, I suppose. Kurosawa now also has his own devastating ultimate. Access to the Omni Slash is online, and that will threaten Chestnut a little bit, of course. Beastmaster's fairly tanky, and in fact, great rotation by Love Clean Coal, and great roar by Chestnut. Spots out the Juggernaut. Obviously, if Juggernaut starts spinning while you can still target the Primal Roar, it will not secure a kill due to the magic immunity preventing damage from the Skywrath's Flare. But just knowing that the Juggernaut will have a second of reaction time, it's Chestnut who reacts the fastest, one of the most experienced players in this game, nails that roar and ensures that I Love Clean Coal is able to pick up an important recovery kill with that Mystic Flare on an enemy core after the mid lane didn't go so well. There's still plenty of opportunity in combination with this Beastmaster, especially for that Skywrath to bounce back into the game. So both mids currently making their presence felt around the map. We see supports taking up the space they leave behind in the lane, creeping closer to their important level 6s. Keith's a little bit further off, but it's not as important the timing. Actually, we might see another important level 6. Actually, Enigma is still a fair ways off Black Hole and doesn't have the mana for it anyway. But they're still fighting this out. Just the Enigma Eidolons themselves are very powerful. And Pacifist, he did a great job there of holding the Swashbuckle for as long as possible. And in the end, while the Ursa leap does ensure that he goes down, the Ursa's the one who dies first. So these trades broadly favoring the Radiant now. Kurosawa, though, maybe not. Okay, actually managed to find the Omni Slash. That was great stuff. Had the target. You know, it's hard to think that there might be some burst damage. It seems like the Fade Bolt was already used. And while Keith does get a double kill, I think that's still worth it for the Radiant. You're doing everything you can to buff up these Juggernaut cores, and in a trade situation like that, maybe getting the first kill of the trade on the enemy Beastmaster is what matters. But having just talked about how Keith was a little bit behind on levels, we're now about to see him pick up the spell still on the Rubik, as well as some mana boots. So now Keith, we'll see how good a Rubik player he is once we, you know, see the Rubik get that sort of basic kit online and the real teamfights start to happen. The opportunity is still Black Hole will be there from the very first Black Hole usage, and there are a few more devastating spells to pick up in the game of Dota 2. As we see Jay go down again, Pacifist having got levels in that Swashbuckle now is a fearsome force, but again, it's a trade of kills, and this time the core kill goes the way of the Dire. So ANU picking up an important trade in their own favor. It's a Beastmaster Roar expended, but that's a relatively short cooldown, and that's all you want to be doing with it anyway, is picking up core kills wherever you can. Chestnut's usage of Roar is particularly important in this game, just because so many heroes on the Radiant side really only fear him at this point in the game, right? Like the Storm Spirit's mobility is controlled by the Roar, the magic immunity of the Juggernaut and the Pangolier are neutralized by it. The Enigma Black Hole is stopped by it. And the Enigma, speaking of Black Hole, has no mana to use it and was just kind of sitting in top lane for a while, even after that kill. Apparently happy to rely on Eidolons for the time being. Maybe it would have been worth it to have the mana for Black Hole there. Your team could have teleported into the tower to maybe save you with a Pangolier Rolling Thunder or some sort of follow-up, but instead, we just see him go down. I'm sure there'll be more chances to use the cooldown, given how aggressive the Dire lineup is, but it just goes to show the hidden cost of sitting around without resources in lane. The hidden cost of sitting around in the jungle without support is going to be levied on Jay now, as Curaçao picks up on a nice little disable from Noodle. So it looks like he comboed the long-range Hex into the shorter-range Shackle, and that's an easy pickup. Ursa doesn't even bother coming over to join the fight. He's focused on farming that Battle Fury, which is only a couple of minutes away. Meanwhile, Juggernaut not going for his own Battle Fury, opting for the faster Maelstrom build. And with the Possessed Mask, it's a really nice neutral item pickup, a little bit of good luck for the Radiant, for UC Stars. I expect to see that Juggernaut coming to fights earlier on and sort of meeting the Ursa at the Ursa zone timing, which is a nice adjustment. You know, if they both go for Battle Fury, Ursa sort of is just a bit tankier and a bit more fearsome, especially when Omnislash isn't available. And we see the Enigma go down in top lane again. Doesn't look like Black Hole was used at least, but Rolling Thunder was used. And Pacifist, he's still committing to this. Maybe he wants to pick up some farm off the Beastmaster summons, but doesn't immediately have the Swashbuckle available. And gets a lot of mana burn. Manages to, again, use the Swashbuckle right before he dies and picks up a kill on Chestnut. But this is the big trade. The Storm Spirit, the mana drain for mana burn from these Beastmaster summons from the Necro book was pivotal there. Burned out the mana of maybe all three heroes. You didn't see Enigma before he died, but I have to imagine there's a good reason not to use Black Hole there. And so without their key spells, the trade does go decidedly the Dire's way, mopped up by the Skywrath Mage, Mystic Flare, and gets revenge on Lucy Drop for how the mid lane went. So 12 minutes, really solid action. That's actually crazy rate. We've seen 27 kills in 12 minutes of play. It's been a steady drip, but neither of these teams are letting up at all. And, you know, because the kills have been spread so evenly, none of these heroes are really suffering or out of the game or anything yet. Everyone's got their ultimates online. Whenever we see our first 5-man fight, this is going to be virtually apocalyptic, especially if all the spells continue to be saved. Now, if I were playing Enigma, as we see a pretty ill-timed pause. Keith of the past has to go get the door. But this does allow the Radiant to kind of decide what they're going to do about this Beastmaster. There's no Roar for 20 seconds. The Necronomicon is on cooldown. The Black Hole is available. No mobility item to get in range, and we're still a ways off that Blink Dagger for Enigma. But Pacifist could easily pop the roll in a couple of seconds' time, and it should be good for at least one hit on Chestnut in the open field. Even if not, even if Chestnut has the fancy footwork to step around the Rolling Thunder, the Enigma should be able to close the gap, and you could potentially secure a Black Hole kill. All of these heroes in mid lane, they've just smoked up, so not only is teleporting to this top lane tower still probably too slow to intervene and even force a trade, it's going to be costly. You know, you're kind of committed to this smoke, there's a bit of sunk cost involved. They might just decide to accept this gank onto Chestnut and instead roam deep to try and find the Juggernaut or the Storm, as I imagine they are trying to do with this smoke. They don't have vision of these camps, so they don't know that they've already been cleared out, and they're hoping to encounter one of the carries farming the shallow part of the jungle to get an easy kill with these silences and stuns. In fact, I Love Clean Coal has the Rod of Atos, so barring some very fast fingers, that will be a guaranteed kill, but it looks like they're not going to go the right way. Curaçao actually did move back out in the dangerous area of the jungle as the smoke was committed, but they didn't find him. Instead, they're focusing on Loose Drop in the mid lane. It's a great lift from the Rubik. It's going to last just long enough to buy time for the silence, and the Mystic Flare. Jeez, it was close, but that combo was just clean enough. There was literally no gap for Lucy Drop. Can't really flame the Storm there. Just gets a bit caught out. You could see, even playing in front of the Tier 1 tower, you know, in a fairly safe position, all you could really ask for is to be maybe a little bit further to the left, but we'll see whether he can get anything done in retaliation. The Beastmaster does go down to Pacifist, so they pulled the trigger on the Black Hole and the roll. The Enigma might even still be traded as Chestnut sends the Zoo after him, but it looks like he managed to escape. Actually, Skywrath Mage, this hero has such long range, such good tracking ability on the nukes. Just has to get in range, but it looks like there's enough Radiant heroes present to zone them out. And with Jay committing to the hero, you can see, looks like the Enigma will slip away, but now the Dire have just fully wrapped around and invaded this top lane effectively. Doesn't look like they want to tangle with the tower. They're happy to take apart the Radiant Triangle, get a bit more farm on their Ursa, who does now have that Battle Fury ready. So the worst possible impact is blunted. You know, they didn't kill multiple cores. They didn't snowball any of these kills into towers. But you did just spend Black Hole, and the Dire know that. So now they'll be looking to set up something in the mid lane. And actually, Rurik managed to steal the Black Hole. I didn't realize that Keith showed up late to that fight. Perhaps that was, you know, the motivation of Black Hole, a solo hero. As I see Noodle get caught out, just playing too close to the tower against that Skywrath combo. The team have to adapt now. It's very unsafe to stand within range of this death ball because Skywrath just has an opportunity to turret on you. But their team also has to play very carefully now that for the next however many seconds, Keith is in possession of their most powerful spell, the Black Hole. I managed to maybe pick that up as Enigma was fleeing the fight. They've managed to silence the Storm Spirit, so Lucy Drop in a really difficult position. And now we see the Omni Slash committed. The Black Hole from Keith only finds one, and it's disabled by the Enigma, so mopping up his own dirty work there, cleaning up after his mistakes, uses that Malefice to cancel the Black Hole early, and ensure that Pacifist can have a very important impact in this team fight. He gets a double kill on and finishes off the Ursa in particular, but the other two cores are still alive, and even with low hit points, Chestnut's pretty much out of threats at this point. There's no window for Noodle to close the gap on the Shadow Shaman. Of course, no blinks available yet for either him or Enigma, and so those Serpent Wards will have to find a different target. Maybe I Love Clean Coal here. He doesn't have a 4-star. He would be very vulnerable to getting ward trapped, but Noodle, obviously, one wrong step or one little bit of vision that the Dire have would result in instant death for the Shaman. You might not be even able to get your full spell combo off with the relatively fast turn time of the Skywrath Mage, so he's happy to leave it around, and the Dire remain in command of this map. There's 5k gold lead, level 3 Necrobook. Chestnut might not be able to be saved by the level 3 Necrobook as Storm Spirit falls over the top of those summons and just picks off the main hero at low hit points, so that was an overextension, probably the first big mistake I've seen Chestnut make this game. His own team sort of forced to watch him die. But they're still in a very strong position broadly. This Juggernaut carry, despite having gone for the cheaper farming item in Maelstrom, is still on just a farming item. And as we saw, Kurikau came to that last fight and I think died to the Ursa. Yeah, the Ursa just a very strong counter to the Jug whenever Omni Slash isn't available or there's any sort of item disparity. So Ursa with this Battle Fury kind of has the edge both in farming and fighting right now. And the Juggernaut's only hope is to drag the game later and fight around the disables that his team provides and his own Omni Slash. So, you know, with multiple heroes on this team being heavily bracketed by cooldowns, in particular Jug and Enigma, it's up to the Dire to force the tempo, and that's what they're going to try and do here. It seems like we're just pushing lanes out, then we're maybe grouping for another smoke, and there we have it. The smoke from Jay. It's a 4-man smoke. The Ursa's farming alone with the Battle Fury, looking to probably pick up a BKB. Actually going Basher next, probably saving the BKB. And they'll find the Juggernaut. This is the hero they want to find the first time. A little bit of miscommunication as Keith throws the Jug into the Ice Path, but out of the Mystic Flare, completely wasting Skywrath's ult. And nevertheless, they get the kill. Chestnut drops the Raw to absolutely make sure that that kill happens. And that's the kind of play you see from experienced players. They understand that, you know, cooldowns are a resource, but it's nothing compared to securing a kill on your enemy's carry. And that's why Lucy Drop is going to commit hard to this Ursa in the top lane. Understands that there needs to be something done to slow down his item progression. And sure enough, it takes the full stick of butter from Storm. But the Ursa does die. Now, Lucy Drop, unfortunately, is a bit of a sitting duck. And the Dire, who are already wrapping around 2 top lane, maybe to collapse on this tier 1 tower, do end up in a great position to punish that aggression because it took all of the gas that Storm had in the tank to make that carry kill happen. There's no capacity to get out after the kill, and it ends up just being a trade of cores, effectively. Now Noodle, he's still too close to this Skywrath Mage. You understand that the hero has insane movement speed, right? 441 movement speed to 355. This hero can run you down like no one's business as Shadow Shaman, and you have the super long-range initiation combo of the Root from the Rod of Atos and the Silence from the Ancient Seal. Even without additional heroes there from the Dire, that's a guaranteed kill on Noodle, and almost one that happens too fast for his own team to intervene. Keith has another great ultimate soul, and this time it's the Storm Spirit's Ball Lightning, and uses it to get a Blink Dagger-like initiation and clean up Pacifist, who is, you know, so far maybe the better player or best player in these fights for the Radiant. It's looking shaky here for the UC Stars. They have to fix up these positioning problems, and granted, it is very difficult, right? Like, a lot of these heroes are very static. Enigma has picked up the Blink Dagger finally, but Shadow Shaman is not so lucky. No mobility tools for him. At the same time, that just means you need to watch your positioning even more closely against such powerful and immediate initiation and low cooldowns as the Dire have, right? You know they are going to be hunting you basically at all times, especially when your team have shown cooldowns around are low. And Kurikawa, I mean, it's one thing to be hunted, it's another thing to walk into the lion's den. Maybe you're thinking on the philosophy that the deeper you go, the less likely they are to look for you there, but you just unfortunately wandered straight into the teeth of the Dire, and this is what it is to control the map so thoroughly. We see these heroes so spread out that they just also managed to intercept the Enigma, who maybe thought, oh, they've just ganked the Juggernaut deep in our jungle. Maybe I can go for a shallow D ward. But not only is the vision already there for the Dire, really deep Dire vision now, even deeper, placed up by Keys, showing how confident they are. But there was only a couple of heroes that ganked your Jug, and the other heroes that were left behind easily capable of killing you as you sort of struggle your way in optimistically to try and secure some vision. So the only real play available is the one that Lucy Drop drew on the minimap immediately after Juggernaut died, which is, by God, just shove out the other two lanes, minimize the damage, let us focus on defending or even sacrificing one lane at a time, make sure we have these lanes pushing out early, because they keep being caught by the wraparound from the Dire from one lane to another. And speaking of getting caught, Noodle on the Shadow Shaman, I don't know if we've even seen a single Mass Serpent Ward cast this game, because this hero has just died over and over and over since the laning phase ends. 6 deaths on him, 6 deaths on Jug, 6 deaths on Pango, 5 on Storm, 10 on Enigma. Oh, sorry, that has to be assist, right? 3 on Enigma. Yeah, I misread that. But yes, 26 kills in 20 minutes just to the Dire, and even with 13 kills of your own, the UC Stars, they need to recognize there's something wrong with how they're playing this game. They have to start giving up some of these objectives if they're not going to group up and defend as fire. Because any lone hero against such powerful single target initiation is absolutely a sitting duck, no matter who they are. As we finally, 20 minutes in, get a slight lull in the action. The Radiant were allowed to hang on to their outpost through a small bit of mercy. Maybe I think the tier 2 tower might have taken just a bit too long to go down. And they're even leaving it up here on the Dire, maybe to bait some heroes into this smoke, as we see I Love Clean Cole never look back from that mid lane. It might not have gone well for him, but the game since has been absolutely textbook, beyond godlike now, on the Skywrath Mage, as Noodle just, willingly walks into the jaws of another kill. I don't know, you need to be smoking out to get these wards, you need to be bringing your team to get these wards, or best of all, you need to just not be placing these wards in the first place, right? Like, you know that the enemy are in complete command of your jungle, and you can tell by the position of your cores that they're not in their own jungle, which really doesn't leave a lot of places to find them. So now we're going to be finding them under the tier 2 tower, and that might be the one place they can't afford to go. Great play by Lucy Drop, actually drags I Love Clean Cole back into the black hole, which was slightly misplaced, but besides the misplaced black hole, it's way harder to avoid the simple retaliatory black hole. That mops up Lucy Drop, but it's an instant buyback from the Storm, a very powerful buyback hero. Now he's balling in, didn't have the TP available, burns all the mana, but 1, 2 quick kills. It is a 5 hero wipe that ends up being a 2 for 5 trade, and even though you cost your Storm a lot of gold, Lucy Drop is able to at least secure some of it in return for those kills. Didn't quite get the beyond godlike streak on I Love Clean Cole. That went to pacifist on the Pangolier. I'm not even sure that's a bad thing, because Pangolier, of course, also gunning for a Yule Scepter to be able to shrug off the silences of the Skywrath Mage. Juggernaut, likewise, hoping to build a Manta, but actually he's prioritized a Blink. So, in any case, the gold being picked up from these teamfights is absolutely critical to the Radiant. If their item progression had stalled out for any longer, their ways back into this game, begin to shrink. And now is the time for Noodle to finally make his way into the jungle and try and get rid of some of these Dire wards that are unfortunately about to expire. But, at least we'll have the chance. Nice placement there. He's going to get some gold from them. But yes, it did cost your Storm a buyback, so you can't pull that trick too often, both for Lucy Drop's own good and, just by the laws of Dota cooldowns. We need to see better itemization or more powerful itemization from these cores, and soon. The Juggernaut in particular, just the choice to itemize offensively with the Blink Dagger and the Storm Orchid instead of defensively with multiple silence purging items is a little bit concerning to me. We do see Enigma going for the BKB right off the bat, so going to be forcing Chestnut to focus on him rather than any of the other cores, which is a win. Even if you don't really get to channel a long black hole, that's kind of a dream scenario anyway. If you get a second of black hole off and then you draw a roar from the Beastmaster and that allows one of your cores to survive or allows Lucy Drop to go completely nuts, then you've effectively done your job for the team, even if it's not the most glorious one. And Lucy Drop is gonna again be looking for the 1v1 with Haha's Ursa. The Ursa is closing in on BKB, which will make basically impossible for Storm to do this. Has both parts of the BKB now. But, even without the fully completed magic immunity, just the stats alone that we now see on Haha, the levels, mean that Lucy Drop is no longer keen to go for this kill, The first time it happened, it ended up costing the Storm, his life after, all the mana was expended to secure the kill. This time it's clear we're not even confident we can get that kill at all. And that's a bit worrying. But you do have more burst damage and lockdown in the fights. The Ursa is not beyond the capacity of your team to bring down. It's just unfortunate that your Storm sacrificed a lot of personal protection to go for this Orchid, and now, given how thoroughly the Dire have seized the tempo, there's not a lot of opportunities to use it. As we see a counter smoke from the Dire, they are looking for a kill, much the same way we were just looking at Lucy Drop hunting through the Dire jungle. They take possession of the Radiant Triangle. Keith gives a D ward, obviously understanding that this smoke is probably scouted. So everyone's aware of what's happening right now. But can UC Stars do anything about it? As we see what is a very fast Roshan begun by ANU. Chestnut leading the way with that attack speed aura, the Inner Beast. It's buffing up Haha's Ursa, already the best Roshan taker in the game, probably bar none. And it looks like the Radiant, they're kind of going forward now, but it was too hesitant. I don't think they were really planning to ever contest this Roshan kill. They do need to get out of its way, though, as Haha, with that Aegis, with that BKB, and we see actually the Storm balls through the back line, trying to maybe pull some attention away. I think they might have seen Haha, and understand that since this Ursa still doesn't have Blink Dagger, kind of the only item missing from the progression at this point, maybe your best chance of taking a fight is to isolate and kill a backline target. It's pretty creative play, and I do like the idea. It didn't pay off, but it also didn't cost Lucy Drop his life, so we're, overall in support of this attempt. Now, if you hadn't spent your TP there, you could perhaps use the Ball Lightning trick to clear away the enemy creep wave now, but instead, Lucy Drop balls in and catches first the silence, then the lift, then the roar. Kurikow dives in deep and gets carved up. There's a black hole, but it's too late. Both the cores are already dead, and it's pretty immediately cancelled out. Keith has stolen the black hole for the third time, barely gets to cast it at all as he's finally cleaned up, but Pacifist, that's about all he wrote. He gets to kill off one support, and in return, the entire team is decimated. You kind of have to take a look at your cores there, because that's kind of like playing Hero Ball there, as the Storm Spirit way too eager to dive the backline when you could have simply held the high ground. The first dive, the punishment is more subtle. It costs you the opportunity to just clear out the creep safely and delay the enemy push for free with your teleport scroll and Ball Lightning. That second dive, far more obvious in what it cost you. And it ended up costing Kurikow and the rest of the Radiant team as well. Now, they have no Black Hole, they don't have a Storm Spirit or a Juggernaut, they're both without their buybacks. As we look at them, it's due to cooldown and money, respectively. But either way, those heroes are unavailable, and now two more are unavailable as well. As Passus and Nadul, they get cleaned up, obviously trying to defend the tower undermanned, just exposes them, and it's very easy for the Dire to pick them off, but they do buy their tier 3 tower, I suppose. Without the Aegis on the Ursa was popped, and with that being spent, even with the BKB coming back up, they feel supremely unpressured on ANU. They are not interested in committing into this tier 1 tower and waiting to get ambushed by a Juggernaut Omnislash and a reviving Storm Spirit. They understand that those heroes didn't unleash their full potential, particularly the Jug Omnislash in the last fight, because of how quickly they died. So, to stick around and invite a fight on the Radiant Steps there, even though you feel as though you must be on the precipice of breaking that high ground apart, probably not in their interests. Actually playing extremely brazenly for a player whose team just fell back from the high ground. Going way deep, but perhaps fortunately for them, Lucy Drop decides to dive and punish the Rubik instead. That's a blind ball. So, while on the one hand I have to compliment Lucy Drop for the kind of game vision, actually no, there was a Radiant Ward that may have scouted the Rubik there, so appreciate the vision to identify there's a lonely support target there, and the creativity to make that play. As we see a miss blink out of the Enigma. Maybe Smart cast the blink right in front of himself, did not go up the high ground, and the entire Dire team pounces. That's brutal, and probably costs them at least one tier 3 tower when you account for the Storm Death as well. So just a plethora of small mistakes adding up here very quickly for the UC Stars. Storm Spirit trying to do too much and getting caught and dying multiple times. This Enigma, granted in a very difficult pressure game against a Rubik when your team is behind and basically relying on you to win fights, still can't afford to be misblinking like that when the enemy are right on top of you. Kurikow now using his own Blink Dagger. Again, not certain how valuable that pickup was, because as we can see, does not really save his life. Gets bashed inside the spin, and then as it ends, I Love Clean Call has the easiest mop-up in the world. It's really only Pacifist on this Pangolier who's looked effective in the team fights, but one offlane Pangolier is insufficient to trade with such a powerful team at the peak of their timing. 29 minutes in, 19,000 gold ahead, 40 kills, 40 on the board for the ANU squad as they romp into the Radiant base, take out their first lane of Rax, take out this Pangolier, and this really does look like a stronger team punishing a weaker team for their lack of discipline. Like, maybe the individual players here, like Lucy Drop and Pacifist, are up to the task on an individual skill basis. Actually, sorry, I didn't realize the Ursa's just been left behind in the base. Now he's going to get solo Black Hole. BKB did take out Lucy Drop, so even if the Ursa was to die here, it's hard to say that's a win for the UC Stars, but they don't even get that. The Black Hole against the BKB target just doesn't do enough damage. There's no support, no heroes alive, no heroes even available to buy back for the cheap core kill. Now they're just going to pick apart that Enigma. I Love Clean Call absolutely feasting this game. 15, 3, and 9, and 2 of those deaths at least were in the laning phase. He has dominated the game from word to go. Of course, has been Chestnut, maybe pulling off an even bigger contribution, and Keith playing red hot on this Rubik, but certainly the ANU squad have looked much better coordinated and like they have a much more keen idea of what they have to do to win the game of Dota. Chestnut just roars the spinning Juggernaut. This Black Hole's going to punish them. Actually, no, sorry, that's Keith's Black Hole, right? Keith blinked behind my screen and dropped the Black Hole. It looked like a Radiant Black Hole from the positioning, but no, we haven't seen a Black Hole that long come out from Enigma basically all game. Of course it was Keith showing up huge on this 4-position Rubik and dropping another devastating Black Hole. At this point, it's hard to say it's the final nail in the coffin. It feels like the coffin's already been nailed shut. But, you know, extra nails for pure disrespect, I guess. Making a statement. This is a best of 2, so the psychological damage you feel like has to weigh on UC Stars at some point. If any of their players are prone to tilt. I mean, they're not showing it in their credit. You know, they're still fighting it out as best they can. I would like to see a little bit more coordination. I'm not going to put this all on the supports, on say, Noodle Shadow Shaman, because it's the awkward part of playing these counter-initiating but static supports alongside some very mobile, high-potential, high-ceiling cores, is that, you know, sure, Lucy Drop and Pacifist can bowl around and do whatever they like in the fights without really getting punished too easily, but it means that when you're trying to follow them so that you're in position to protect those plays, you yourself are far less able to get in and out of the fights, and that's what we've seen over and over again, is Noodle trying to sort of step up into the zone to be ready to contribute. You know, no Aether Lens and no Blink Dagger means you just have to foot slog it forward, and that's the moment when they just repeatedly pick him off with a couple of low cooldown spells and items, and, you know, leave the fight a 4v5 in their favor. That's been kind of the first brick to fall in almost all of these situations for the UC Stars, and something they need to look at either in their play or their draft for Game 2. Of course, Game 1's not over, but as we see ANU begin to close on the last surviving lane of Rax, it's not clear to me exactly how they would make their way back into the game. It's a 29,000 gold net worth lead. Chestnut burning the BKB by accident does kind of help. We'll see him run the high ground as Beastmaster just to sort of, I don't know, show the BKB. So, you know, you want to make sure your opponent knows it's on cooldown. Maybe some sort of, like, 10-dimensional bait. When you're this far ahead, you can really do whatever you like. And now we see the blink in from the Juggernaut. Blinks to try and find the Omni Slash, but blinks into the full team, so that's not really what the value you want the Blink Dagger to provide. The Omni Slash damage is already not big, it's spread on the whole team, and now we see the Rubik's Cube rolling around, rolling Thunder. It's stolen Thunder now. Keith just having an absolute field day. All of these channeled ultimates that are absolutely free steals for the Rubik pickup. He crushes the Radiant backline, and Pacifist, while he has some success, brings down the Jakiro. It, again, isn't enough. I sound like a broken record at this point. He just hasn't been able to secure these team fights on his own. The rest of his team are just too vulnerable, too squishy, too many disables on the side of the Dire. And now we're going to see Lucy Drop making a last stand, baits out the Atos and the Silence, goes for the ball lightning play, but gets instantly bashed by the Swift Blink Ursa Bear as he falls out of his own mules before he can even get off the Storm ultimate. So that is a pretty definitive, we'll call it, good game. ANU Esports crushing that first game. 33 sleek minutes of domination, 52 kills in that time. Hard to ask for much more efficiency than that. So we bring it back to the draft screen. Luckily, we don't have to wait long for game 2. This is, of course, again a cast of a replay, but I'm not sure how this series ends up, and neither are you. So stick around for 5 minutes, and after this short break to catch my breath, after that absolute barn burner, we'll be right back with more of the Australian Esports University League Season 1. back, everybody, to the Australian University Esports League Dota 2. It's Season 1 of 2021 here. I couldn't be more thrilled to be bringing you Game 2 here of this series between UC Stars and ANU Esports. Of course, we just saw Game 1. The Stars, they had a rough one of it. An interesting draft that I quite enjoyed, but a few little mistakes here and there very quickly started to add up with the insane aggression coming out of ANU Esports. In particular, their cores, I Love Clean Coal and Chestnut, really took the fight up to the Stars, punished the positioning of their weaker supports. So we'll see whether they can do it again and just make it a 2-0 run over, or whether, the UC Stars will sort of rally and bounce back. Their errors are preventable, and it feels like their players have the quality to recognize and change up that play on the fly. So we'll begin with this second replay. Of course, this series did take place last week, but it's important to make sure that we're on top of the form of each team and giving these matches the attention they deserve. And speaking of deserved attention, I'd like to also shout out again our sponsors for this season. We've got AOC, our monitor sponsor, who have been with us for several seasons, bringing you the best gaming monitors, super fast response times, incredible refresh rates, deep colors, everything you could possibly want, in a gaming monitor, especially for competitive play, where that kind of technical quality is essential to raising the ceiling. The average player like me, maybe you don't need an AOC monitor, although you'll feel the difference. But for these players, when you're trying to say steal a black hole from an Enigma or bash a Storm as he falls out of Yules right before he gets a jump off, that's one server tick kind of timing. So essential that you not be slowed down by any of the available hardware. And then of course, I hope that like me, you go back after these game series and depend upon the valid products of our food and drink sponsors, our bubble tea sponsor Chatime and our ramen noodle sponsor Indomie, who've been fueling gamers for many years and fueling this tournament so that the university players from around Australia have an avenue to strut their stuff on the big stage. So this time we are going to be seeing ANU take a different tack. They've got the Batrider, or at least a different set of tools for a similar tack, because Batrider Clockwork, that's potentially an even more aggressive pairing than the Skywrath Beastmaster duo they used to dismantle Game 1. So, if you're UC Stars and you just picked up the Shadow Shaman, you might be similarly afraid that Noodle is going to be taking a lot of deaths again, right? That's what I sort of tried to emphasize in the first draft about the higher than usual skill gap in these games. It can lead to players with just less competitive experience on the whole going up against seasoned, ruthless veterans who are able to identify just the lack of awareness and exploit it over and over again. But this time, UC Stars, they secure the Underlord nice and early. The kind of offlaner, unlike the Enigma, whether this Underlord is actually a support or a core, this is the kind of lockdown that you don't have to rely on much going right to get off. You simply drop the pit down, and for melee heroes like Clockwork, or, in many ways Batrider is kind of a melee hero, it just was a massive pain in the ass. If you ever have a secondary disable from the Shadow Shaman, or from your own Rod of Atos, you can end up rooting somebody in the pit for 6 seconds or so at a time, which is, absolutely an eternity in a Dota team fight. So we'll see whether the Underlord is punished by an unfavourable lane matchups. There's lots of carries that ANU could go to for that. In particular, the Juggernaut and the Ursa that we saw last game both line up pretty favourably against Underlord, despite being melee heroes. Just the chance to chase this big lump out of the lane can really ruin his entire potential for the rest of the game, given that he has so few tricks up his sleeve. Really is a what you see, what you get kind of hero. But ANU, they're banning out some of the laning combos with the Underlord, in particular the Mirana, as well as powerful cores like Terrorblade, OD, and Clinks. While UC Stars, they remove the Night Stalker, so again, a hero that punishes heavily supports like Shadow Shaman. Last game, it seemed like an essential pickup to try and protect the Enigma, so maybe they're going to go back to that well, even after the devastating Game 1. They do ban out the Beastmaster and the Nyx this time, so kind of zeroing in on the powerful ganking, disabling heroes that might be able to back up this Batrider and this Clockwork. Granted, this is already a very powerful initiating core for ANU, but you can always have more, jump on them heroes. The overall effect can be overwhelming, even for very high-level teams. Sort of call back to MVP Dota, the Korean squad who made that kind of play their trademark for years. But instead, we might be seeing something a little bit more balanced out of ANU. I'd be interested to see whether, Haha, having just played the Ursa and kind of just run over the game, can play a more, farm-oriented carry Well, maybe that's not their style, but we'll see what they eventually pick up. The Ursa is banned, so we'll have to see ANU go with something different. The Stars themselves have, pretty wide open options since these two heroes they've already picked up do a good job pushing out the lanes most of the time and offer a good mix of disable and damage, frontline and backline. Their options are open, which is what you generally look for in the first phase of the draft. The Warlock ban out of ANU is kind of interesting. Not a hero that you normally see removed. But perhaps just aware that it gives, again, very reliable front-loaded teamfight control. It's the kind of support where if you see the Batrider diving, the AoE on the stun from the Infernal is so large that... the Chaotic Offerings, I should say, that you almost can't miss. You're going to interrupt that Batrider's initiation, and even if the Warlock dies afterwards, you probably got Fatal Bonds off, you might have even channeled a bit of Upheaval, and you've still got a summoned Golem to worry about. So it's the kind of hero that's hard to completely negate the impact of, and when you look at what happened in the duel, and even the Enigma in Game 1, it's understandable that UC Stars might go back for a support like Venomancer, who, similarly to Warlock, kind of just front-loads all his spells and then dies happily. Having already contributed, you already lock in that baseline performance instead of, having your support heroes basically get cancelled out of the game. Okay, so we're going to follow up what is... I was assuming it was a 4-position clockwork, but actually it's seemingly more likely a 3-position clockwork now. Chestnut, having just, led the way on Beastmaster, seems very well equipped as a player to sniff out ganks and initiate with hookshot, and now he has a Treant Protector to back him up. One of the most powerful laning heroes in Dota 2. His auto attack's equivalent to the level 1 nukes of other heroes, and also going to be able to help around the map if there is a difficult lane matchup, maybe against that Shadow Shaman or that Venomancer. Having the global living armor is going to help secure it, as well as blunt any future pushes. The Veno, Underlord, Shadow Shaman trio are a pretty solid, pushing unit, even without a real tower sieging core in that group. Venomancer and Underlord can nuke down the waves and really easily secure, the push on the tower with wards and Rain of Fire. And then, of course, you have more wards from the Shadow Shaman to actually knock the buildings over. Now they're joined by Juggernaut, again, one of the strongest carries on the patch. We didn't really see his full potential in Game 1, but the fact that it was able to be a threat for most of that game, even from pretty far behind, should tell you a lot. Another solid pushing hero. And ANU, okay, I said that I wanted to see Haha smiley face play a more farm-oriented carry, and here we have the Spectre. Not like a Naga or a Terrorblade, where you have a very, very high-intensity farming game going on. The pressure from this hero comes from merely staying alive for long enough to come online, right? You're mostly just moving around the map to any available space, deciding when to join the fights with Haunt. I am noticing a pretty powerful ability to, again, get all of their heroes contributing to a fight in some way, which was a big factor in how ANU were able to, really start rolling up the UC Stars in Game 1, right? They were constantly moving as a group, and any time that UC Stars tried to contest, if they did not bring their entire unit, whoever they committed to the fight would just be overwhelmed by raw numbers. And here, you have the Batrider and the Clockwork, who are both highly mobile initiators. They can get to the kills that each other begin very, very straightforwardly. They can even manipulate the enemy position in the case of Batrider. Treant has the global armor to contribute, and Spectre has the global haunt. So it's no surprise to see UC Stars ban out Zeus, who would really complete this picture as, another global ultimate hero. Although I don't expect ANU are looking for a 4-position support or a mid laner. I think this might be a mid-bat. It's where the Batrider seems to have been mostly relegated after the reversion of the crazy buffs Icefrog previously had on his farming with Sticky Napalm. You kind of need those levels now to make sure that you can take a bunch of ancient stacks with the nerf damage and still get your Boots of Travel or Blink Dagger or Force Staff on time and start ganking with that mobility item. And they remove out the 2 spirits, who would both be pretty good to punish Batrider in the mid lane. So UC Stars, they remove Zeus, I think, more just for the general synergy than anything else. But if I were paying close attention, I would be more scared of Nature's Prophet. A hero that can also contribute to a gank anywhere on the map at any time. A hero that has the ability to isolate a hero like Juggernaut, if Juggernaut isn't holding onto a Quelling Blade for a lot of the game. A hero that can easily punish and kill fragile supports like Shadow Shaman and Venomancer once he acquires the first item, Orchid. And yeah, hero that can also farm in the available space, because UC Stars right now, it looks like this is definitely a team designed to move as 5. So it's a good reaction to what happened to them in Game 1. But then the ANU Esports team can use their superior ability to not only move around the map, but also choose which fights happen and where they do, to just make the most of all available space. You know, if you've got 5 heroes in one lane getting resources out of one part of the map, and the enemy are farming everywhere else, and threatening to pick off anyone who strays too far from the group, you inevitably start to fall behind on resources, and that just accelerates the point of the game where the Spectre naturally takes over. Her immense late game carry power is just going to overwhelm even the Juggernaut, eventually. So, I'd love to see the Nature's Prophet pick up from ANU here. And there it is, Nature's Prophet, Chestnut on the draft, well in tune with my thinking here. I promise I did not look at these replays or this draft ahead of time. It just shows you how good a pick it is. If even a caster can pick up like, oh, this would be a lovely pick, I've sniffed it out, then you know you've got something. And it looks like actually we've flipped the script. It's going to be I Love Clean Coal on the Prophet mid. Definitely not a poor choice either, of course. NP, one of the most flexible heroes in Dota 2, essentially just like a tabula rasa that you can project any role and item build onto. Lucy Drop is going to pick up the puck in response. So again, Lucy Drop did well from the laning phase last game, just had an unfortunate... After those first couple of rotations, the team just fell too far behind, and the Storm's early Orchid pickup was kind of punished, not so much by, it being slow or even a bad choice, but just the fact that the ANU squad grouped up so effectively and were able to stay grouped up because they kept getting kills and kept getting towers. They were never really pressured to leave that clumped formation, and it made this Orchid pickup, which is designed to pick off individual heroes, really a liability, just a bunch of dead gold on Lucy Drop that kind of crippled their ability to contribute to the game like they should have been able to. So now the puck, a much more flexible hero, it must be said, doesn't really need items to be effective, and the typical item build allows you to do really whatever you like. Tons of play to be had, and definitely fits this idea that this team will be working as a group and going on objectives, right? I already mentioned how strong these 3 heroes are at pushing. We've got Kurikau back on the Juggernaut. That hero also pushes towers and provides, the damage you need to finish off towers without having to commit the Mass Serpent wards every time. The Healing Ward obviously also keeps your team alive. You've got the bailout of the Dark Rift on the Underlord to help escape from team fights should the global lineup collapse on you and you feel uncomfortable. And if they don't bring all their heroes in the right position, you have this ability with Lucy Drop on the puck. This is that X-Factor hero every pushing lineup needs, who has mobile initiation. And it might not seem clear immediately why you need that, because of course you don't really need to initiate on a tower. It kind of stays there, but the puck can see any hero that's standing a little bit behind the tower, a little bit out of position, like, I don't want to name names, but Noodle often was caught in Game 1, standing slightly behind the tower, getting ready to defend, and by blinking on that hero, dream calling, silencing, killing them, you cut off the possibility of defense. And often, if you keep getting those kills, you can snowball 1 tower into 2 towers, into 3 towers, into Roshan, into the enemy outpost. By keeping the enemy dead for most of the game, you keep them on the back foot. You make it impossible for them to stop you from warding your jungle. Then you can kill them when they come to de-ward. And even these seemingly innocuous early deaths from being slightly out of position against a pretty powerful initiator, backed up by their whole team, can end up, giving a snowball draft the momentum that it needs to roll through into your base and end the game early, as we saw ANU themselves do in Game 1. Now, this game, they don't have quite as much snowball potential. Obviously, they do have a powerful pusher in the Nature's Prophet, but with a much more passive carry like Spectre, even if Spectre goes into a fighting build, I'd expect them to slow down. I said I'd expect them to slow down. Come on. Keith even asked for a 30-minute moratorium on hitting heroes in the old chat, and now they're going to violate that gentleman's agreement. I Love Clean Coal picks up another First Blood, crushes them to duel. Again, this Shadow Shaman, it seems like a little bit of a cursed pick. The hero, it's very slow moving, has no way to no mobility skill, no way to save itself, just a sitting duck there. Does, I guess, in effect, tank the gank. The Juggernaut is able to get out of the way of that 5-hero freight train. But again, it's not really the way you want to start the game. So we're watching the mid lane carefully. Puck against Nature's Prophet. It's not terrific for Lucy Drop. It's obviously not bad either. Like, the Prophet Treants are more trouble than most heroes to Puck, because, you know, it's hard to really nuke them down, and they're able to just provide this kind of steady, constant harassment that you can't, you know, mobilize around. At the same time, there's not a lot of facility for I Love Clean Coal to chase Lucy Drop should the puck decide to just get out of a dangerous situation. So the best that can really be done is curtailing the puck's last hitting by driving them back from the lane. Meanwhile, in bottom lane, this Spectre is going to be having a really rough time of it. Starts out with a ring of regen and some tangos, no surprise. Understands heavy harassment will be coming out. Pacifist has started with the Poison Sting and will be leveling up the wards as well, most likely to apply that constant harassment, as well as the percentage health damage from the Rain of Fire. As we see, Kurokawa's Courier is actually the second casualty of the game, first of the laning phase. Kurokawa attempting to get revenge, but it's going to have to be revenge for Noodle as well. The Shadow Shaman gets isolated there, and there's 100 damage, or 92 damage Treant punches coming out, end the Shadow Shaman's life pretty quickly. I mean, Shadow Shaman has a bit of hidden arm strength, does nearly as much damage as the Treant at range, but not nearly as much health. And when they stack up 2v1 like that, two beefy strength heroes just slapping the duel, you know, not long for this world, and only the Aether's Shock to try and contribute to the trade. This shows that the lane matchups are really well devised by the Radiant, right? These two tanky heroes top lane, all that Juggernaut and Shadow Shaman have, at least at level 1, is raw damage, all-in damage. If your hero dies to Aether Shock plus Spin, it's really hard to fight this lane, and almost all heroes would at level 1. But with Treant and Clockwork having 860 and 720 health respectively, they are completely fine to stand that damage and fire back with autos, and they're able to win the trade as a result. Now, bottom lane, this might not work out so well. Keith's been doing a great job so far on the support Batrider, pops the Firefly, and just kind of slides backwards under the influence of Venomous Gale. You can see this is where the Radiant are taking the heaviest fire. The Spectre, just not a great laner. Batrider, solid in the trades, but has to watch out for that kind of all-in commitment, especially once Underlord picks up the Pit of Malice, because then you will not be slipping away from anything. You'll be slowed down by the Gale, potentially pitted multiple times over the duration, and thoroughly killed. Spectre isn't going to be contributing to help you in those cases. The Noodle now getting run down by Jay on the Treant. It's level 2 Treant, and again, taking this Aether Shock level 1, it's really punishing the Shadow Shaman. If you had a Hex right now, you could at least escape from this pressure, and it really is only yourself that you need to protect right now. Like, Kurokawa is never dying to these two heroes, at least in the first few levels. That Blade Fury is pretty much the be-all end-all defensively, if not offensively, even in this lane. But because they have that soft target of the Shadow Shaman, that's where Treant is just going over and over again. Noodle gets again targeted by Nature's Grasp. Jay is going to slip away to the trees. The Nature's Guise is going to prevent retaliation. This Treant brambles the Nature's Grasp is even going to stop the safe lane pull. So that was really good new placement. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, Pacifist actually dies. Keith fully commits, which is not a bad idea anyway. As we saw, the trades tend to not go well for this Batrider, so sees an opportunity to spend his life valuably and takes it. That's going to be a full refill of health and mana. You're going to come back to the lane. You're going to get levels as well, which is really key on this Bat. I mentioned about the Bat needing the levels from mid lane to get those jungle stacks, and even if it's not as much of a focus for support Batrider, you are surely happy to sort of bring more parts of your hero online and be able to get some more farm and kind of begin scaling up more rapidly. I suppose something like Pacifist, actually Pacifist, it looks like, sorry, on the core Venomancer this time, so that's an even better trade. You know, happy to remain lower level if needs be. Okay, no, so Pacifist, I think they flipped their 3 and 4 from last game, because Pacifist was definitely the core Pangolier, and there was a support Enigma, I believe, but this is a support Venomancer from the XP alone. So, you know, maybe just a hero comfort kind of thing. Pacifist certainly looks comfortable now, running down Keith, not afraid of the flames from the Batrider, firing off the poison, and could have even kept chasing. The Firefly ended awkwardly close to the high ground there and just kind of left Batrider with a little bit less space than he hoped to create, but the Diary kind of already dropped off the kill attempt, so he just gets to slip away. Now he's going to move up to their triangle and try and secure the bounty rune. Might get found by Lucy Drop, but Lucy Drop's very low, and I'm sure Keith is not in the mindset of, oh, well, kill this puck. Might not be aware of quite how low Lucy Drop is. But, you know, weaves around that orb, and thanks to the puck's low hit points, is going to easily secure the bounty rune. So, I think Lucy Drop saw the Batrider there, because you empty out your health and mana like that, assuming you're going to be able to pick up this bounty rune for an easy refill, and when your orb reveals the Batrider there, we see Lucy Drop immediately just give up and commit to returning to base. It's an annoyingly long walk but you do not want to run uphill and die. Speaking of you don't want to die, haha on this Spectre, any early death is really punishing, even when you're going for a defensive build like a Hood first. They bring in the whole team, though. It's a bit of a bait. They're not quite under the tower, so this could be worse for Pacifist and the Underlord, but, I mean, could be worse for this relative. It's going to be bad enough as is. Haha even gets the last hit on the Underlord, so more gold into the Spectre's pockets after that, you know, kind of hopeful kill attempt. And this is the power of the global lineup, especially the mid-profit. Granted, Lucy Drop going to punish I Love Clean Cole upon his return to lane. Or is he? Okay, Lucy Drop gets blocked off by the Sprout, and, I mean, maybe could have tried to run out the back of the tower. You have the option to bottle up, even as the tower hits you, and maybe could have lived long enough to slip away. But in the end, you know, while you do get the kill, and that's important, not having enough mana or not having enough health to escape after that kill on your opposing core is something of a familiar story for Lucy Drop after game 1. And, you know, we saw how badly that went for UC Stars in the end. So we need to start taking cleaner trades here. As we see Pacifist lining up against the enemy number 4. It's not a great trade to start with because of the 2 extra levels on Chestnut. But Kurakau's looking to even things up. The Battery Assault, though, making things very hard for the Juggernaut. And I Love Clean Cole has just TB'd in with the Travels and double nulls up on the Nature's Prophet and just lays into the Jug, getting multiple hits off. The Treant here as well. Kurakau at least manages to slip away and doesn't die in return, but that must be so bitter to first watch your own 4 position die right in front of you, and then be unable to even tap Chestnut more than once or twice on the way out, just watching the Clockwork slide away. It's demoralizing, especially after game 1. I mean, the Clockwork has power treads, and a bracer, and this Juggernaut has just a wand. I mean, there's items on the courier, I'm sure. Just a chainmail, though, I think it's possible that the Clockwork is a higher net worth. And so it is the 3 highest net worths in the game, the Juggernaut being the 6th net worth, barely ahead of the support, so significantly behind even his own Puck. Granted, Underlord's going to be giving a run for his money, dies to I Love Clean Cole at bottom. The tempo of this global teleporting Prophet, even with only a level 1 teleport, is massive. Granted, hit point pool not quite so massive, does go down there to Lucy Drop and Pacifist. The magic damage stacks up, and that's a really big kill. The highest net worth and I'm sure highest level hero in the game to that point. You know, Lucy Drop again, and Pacifist, the real standouts for this UC Stars team so far, kind of bolstering their game plan as Noodle and Kurakau struggle in the top lane. And this is not even, I'm going to say so much on Kurakau, but just a consequence of the bad start Noodle has had and the strong matchup that the enemy offlaner and 4 position identified against the Shadow Shaman, right? It's only a level 3 Shaman, only 1 point in one of his 2 disables. Like, you're not contributing that much to a fight when, you know, the nuke begins to immediately become less useful. Enemy heroes are gaining levels much faster than you, and that Ether Shock damage is no longer so impressive as Pacifist teleported and get another kill on bottom lane and kill Pacifist Courier. Sorry, I Love Clean Cole. It is killing off Pacifist's Venomancer. And again, you just can't afford to be too far forward. But these heroes, with the exception of the Underlord once he has his ultimate, which he's like a single creep off of, don't really have that many ways to retreat, even when you see Prophet teleporting in right in front of you. So this is a great last pick from I Love Clean Cole, and the position to play it in the mid lane instead of the support role is absolutely paying off, as we see Chestnut mopping up Noodle again, has the hookshot available. It doesn't look like he used it there to get that kill, just kind of able to walk up to him because the Shadow Shaman does not even have boots, does not even have level 4, and now the hookshot, having not been used on Noodle, is going to connect with Pacifist and secure an easy mega kill streak for Chestnut. He's dismantling this game just like he did game 1. Superior game sense, and on the kind of hero that a player like this can just use to viciously bully weaker players, weaker heroes, picking off the backline over and over and over again. The Rocket Flare also scouting out kills for I Love Clean Cole, and they are just sort of, I'm not saying the rest of the team isn't contributing, Keith has been really solid on this support, but they are just handling the UC Stars right now. They don't know what to do, particularly Noodle. Like, and again, it's not flaming the player so much as it is commenting on how difficult his position is right now. All it took was that one early death, and that, you know, this skill build, which, you know, this is a skill build that I would easily back in most games. It's just in the context of the game being 10 minutes deep, and against the heroes he's against, this skill build looks hopelessly rough. He has Shackles instead of Hex. Even the point in Hex would at least be safer, but how are you going to stand there and channel Shackles against these guys? It really is, you know, making this hero completely useless, and he doesn't even have the space to go into the jungle and try and ether shot creep camps. He can't afford to go anywhere else. Chestnut has the hookshot available, surely sees this teleport, but decides not to commit it, and instead we're going to see Noodle maybe finally get to contribute to something valuable. Gets the shackle off on this Spectre, that's pretty big. Manages to hold Haha in place for long enough for the Pit of Malice to come down, but Lucid Drop took a ton of damage. The Nexus Prophet ult prevents the puck from being keen and contributing to kills, and in fact, I Love King Cole arrives in the backline. Lucid Drop kind of sniffed it out and tried to duck back towards the fight, but there's just too much pressure from all sides, and ends up walking back into I Love Clean Cole's clutches. That's a big kill on the puck, going back the other way after the Prophet died before, and this time, unlike that kill on I Love Clean Cole, which was just the one-off, the entire Dire side, bar Caracal, gets mopped up. Again, it's starting to look like just a bit of a class difference between these teams. The draft opens up a ton of opportunities for the ANU squad to play a really aggressive game. They're led by their cores in this. I Love Clean Cole and Chestnut really just understanding exactly where all of these heroes from the UC Stars are going to be, understanding how much stronger they are than those UC Stars heroes right now, and ruthlessly hammering home that advantage at every opportunity. There's like no reason to stop teleporting on them and ganking them, right? This time they're setting an even more brutal pace than game 1. It's 16 kills to 4 at 11 minutes. The trades are cleaner and they're coming more quickly, and now as Keith completes his level, finds his level 6 on the Bat Rider, the Flaming Lasso, I wonder how soon we will see a Blink Dagger come out. And at that point, you know, it's impossible to find any space on the map if you're Caracal or one of the other Dire cores. It's looking brutal again, even so early. As we see, again, the hook shot on the Shadow Shaman. I don't know whether he could have found the Juggernaut. Maybe he just didn't want to tangle with the spin and the Omni-Slash in confined quarters. Or maybe it's just about proving a point and victimizing poor Noodle. They kill off Curacal's Courier, which had the final piece of his Maelstrom on it. Oh, sorry, the first piece of his Maelstrom. That's brutal. No farming item for you for several minutes, my friend. Not even a small one. And now they're going to get Lucid Drop as well. Doing his very, very best with the tools Puck has available to survive. But it's now getting to the point where all of the Dire heroes are thoroughly ahead on levels and gold. Double Falcon Blade, double Null, Power Treads, Casual Windlace. This is the most aggressive Nature's Prophet build I have literally ever seen. Like, this is probably more aggressive than like 6 Nulls. I mean, you could try it. You could normally say, oh, we'll just build a Blade Mail. Like, it's pretty strong against everyone on their team, barring Jug, but there's no need. I Love Clean Cole just says, no, I want the stats. I want the health, I want the damage, I want the int, a little bit of spell amp, I guess, move speed, attack speed, that's all I need. Just having this portable turret, basically, at every available fight is enough. And as the weight, the pressure on this Dire side grows larger and larger, and the lead of the Prophet grows larger and larger. He's already 1,700 net worth ahead of Lucy Drop and Caracal. Like, I Love Clean Cole just becomes impossible to answer. Like, yeah, he could be going for solo kills, but when he teleports in behind his team, he doesn't just have the threat to kill any Dire hero. He's impossible to turn on, because, you know, this Clockwork is also very strong. This Treant is huge. They have multiple ultimates that can discourage initiation. Even the Juggernaut is not really able to get close, going to be rooted up by the tree if he tries to spin in for an Omni-Slash. It's, you know, already very difficult to plot out a winning teamfight for the Dire, and they're doing their best to split the map right now and just delay the game, pick up their items. But, you know, the Juggernaut's had such a poor start, and the Puck now, having died a couple of times, is starting to slide out away that way as well. It means that they're not progressing as quickly as Haha's Spectre, let alone the other cores who are getting all this kill money. And I already mentioned that Spectre's late game tends to be the superior one. So, just red warning bells on all fronts here for the UC Stars. They're already down 1-0 in this early rubber. They can't afford to go down 2-0, can they? I'm sure they don't want to, but Chestnut is intent on pushing them into that hole. Kills Noodle again. We have to check after this game the stats on how many times Clockwork specifically has killed Shadow Shaman, but it's just comedic at this point. There's still no boots. We see Noodle has picked up the 2 cheaper components for Tranquil Boots because he can't muster 500 gold in his pocket at any one time. Has to spend 200 and 300 gold increments before he dies, which is kind of insane at 15 minutes. Like, at this point, a bounty rune is worth that much. So, they have been relentless in killing the support. Now maybe some slight punishment going back the other way. Haha, caught up on the high ground. On the Spectre, actually baits Lucy Drop into the trees, and then uses the Horde defensively. But it's Noodle! Punish Noodle! Comes in, great timing on the teleport. Pacifist goes down the top lane. Chestnut's beyond godlike. No one cares about that, because Noodle Shadow Shaman TP's in, finally, a whole map away from the clutching hookshot of the Clockwork, gets a clutch shackle off on the Spectre, isolates that enemy carry, secures the kill for his team. It's a big kill, and this will finally fund Noodle some boots. Thank God. Unfortunately, Spectre has completed a Blade Mail, so I mentioned in the context of the Prophets build, how good Blade Mail will be for this team. It's equally good on the Spectre, if not better, especially given how tanky she'll eventually become. The natural synergy with this Hood of Defiance, it's already up. And the Spectre's under no pressure to go for something gritty like a Radiance this game, because the rest of the team is already just cleaning up the Dire. I love Clean Cole. Okay, a little bit keen there, tries to cast the Sprout early when the Juggernaut is still magic immune. And of course, you're able to cast Sprout on the ground, but it makes it much harder to get the tree trap, so instead just ends up, creating an ornamental garden as Curacao dashes away. Lucy Drop even manages to punish that whiffed rotation by killing off the Treant. So, the first signs of life in a while here for the UC Stars lineup. But that, that must be taken with a grain of salt. If we check in on their items, it's Pacifist on this Venomancer. He's 4 position. He's going for a 4-star to help try and bail out whoever gets victimized by the Clockwork. Cough, cough, Noodle. But that is a mile off. Veno's slowly going to be able to farm with those wards at least. Curacao has managed to recover his Maelstrom from the Courier, so that's good. And now is just going to try and live in the jungle while the team makes space. This Underlord basically has nothing and is unlikely, unfortunately, to get very much. He can push out the lanes, but it's very dangerous to walk forward at this point. Even as the beefy Demon Boy, you're very vulnerable to getting hooked or initiated on by basically anyone. So, your own lack of mobility starts to work against your potential as a deep pusher or split pusher. That role is going to be left to the even more expendable Pacifist and Lucy Drop. Having got this Blink Dagger up on the puck. Even a DD rune at the ready, so maybe they get keen for something here. Chestnut would be a satisfying kill, but maybe not an easy one. Has the Hood online and a ton of hit points. And actually, goodness gracious, a 17-minute Orchid. This is a core Clockwork, but that's still kind of crazy. 17 minutes, Orchid, Hood, Treads, Bracer, Wand. This is a hero with no inbuilt farming skill. He's just gotten all of this skill from all of this gold from obliterating Noodle Shadow Shaman over and over and over again for 17 minutes, and now it pays off in the power to shut down and kill any hero the same way that he's shutting down these paper thin supports. I was just talking about Lucy Drop's potential, but, this Yules is a ways off. If you get hookshot into Orchid, you are just dead. Chestnut doesn't need the Orchid to kill Pacifist, just the hookshot will do in that case. And feels confident burning it because who's going to say anything to him? Okay, Lucy Drop comes in now, has the double damage rune available in the bottle and the Dream Coil, just the play that we drew up. They commit the wards though on the duel. That's a good addition because Chestnut wasn't really going down that quickly. Locked in the Underlord Pip, absolutely ever, still might not die. Finally, the very last hit from the duel's wards finishes off the big damage from the 7 wards, getting the job done, but they pay a very high price. All of those spells were committed to kill Chestnut. He died long after the heroes were even out of experience range. All of the heroes that were targeting him, except for the Underlord, do go down as well. The puck couldn't find a way out of that fight, even despite, leaving the wards to finish the job on clock, just run down as it tries to escape. That's, more than you can really afford, even when you're this far behind. The gold still goes in favor of the Radiant. Now, we see the Juggernaut rejoin the fight. That's the best Omnislash we've seen in 2 games from Curacao, and he had a blink in game 1. So, full credit to that. Pounces on I Love Clean Cole, who didn't have the Treants near him initially. Just kind of caught napping for a moment. Maybe forgot there was a Juggernaut in this game. Now he will not forget. Actually, sorry, Curacao does have the blink, so that is one way to close the gap quickly. Again, just itemizing for this blink. Second item, both games. It's clearly a comfort build. At least if you can find those sorts of Omnis with the blink, it becomes very worthwhile. And it will be easier to do so against this team for various reasons. I'm still not sure that that's the item I would be building, because maybe you see it as gank protection. It's pretty easy to disable that with a rocket or something and immediately follow up. Chestnut's going to demonstrate by killing off Lucy Drop. No hero is safe, even the hero with magic immunity and blink. But Curacao is clearly hoping that there's going to be a lot of space and that this blink is going to let him farm it and that he'll be able to catch up. and go into a different item. Okay, building the Aghanim Shard, which is the increased Blade Fury speed and damage. Just increased speed, okay, and attack. So it's effectively extra speed and damage for Blade Fury. I guess this is an acknowledgement of the fact that the Juggernaut in these fights, when he's not magic immune or immune with Omni Slash, is a sitting duck, really can't afford to stand and deliver. But I don't know that you can afford to spin and deliver either. Like, this team are no slouches at pumping out auto attack damage. The Treant helps, the actual Treants help. You can easily get body blocked regardless of your movement speed unless you're very careful with your phase boots. Prophet, of course, pumps out the damage, and like, it doesn't increase your damage that much to buy this Aghanim Shard when you don't really have any auto attack items. So I don't really think that even if you spin on I Love Clean Cole, if your Omni Slash isn't ready, Cole is going to stand and fight you. Look at all these stats on the Prophet. He will put you down. Even though this is not normally the way the hero matchup goes between, carry and carry. So I'm really curious to see how Kurokawa's build pays off. We see the Blink spin. Maybe it's just a safe split pushing. As we saw there, the increased movement speed of the spin and the Maelstrom and the ability to attack during the spin means that you're guaranteed to clear out those waves, even with the tree and enhancements. And there is a punishment for that, although at bottom lane, right? Like, as soon as they reveal a couple of heroes top clearing up the wave, they may not punish the Juggernaut due to that item combo, but they do punish the bottom lane. And Kurokawa, the Omni Slash is very good on the Spectre. It leads to a kill. Not immediately, though. Lucid Drop is the sacrifice. Goes down in the meantime, so carry for mid. It's a big trade for the Dire, given how far behind they are. But can Kurokawa escape? The Blink was nearly available, but the lasso from Keith snuffs out all hope. It was a killing spree that Kurokawa kind of assembled there. Surprisingly, just managing to avoid fights, get off a couple of great Omnis with the Blink. Finding that one in particular, I do have to give credit for. That was in the midst of a lot of traffic and brings down the Spectre pretty much the only way his team could. But when you still die for it, when the enemy team are all so much more farm than you, when you are behind in the late game carry matchup against the Spectre, and the Spectre herself is nearly to a Yasha, which will make things nigh impossible for you in terms of killing her, even with a well-placed Omni like that. You're not going to kill the Spectre through a damage spread of 2 illusions without having gone for a Battle Fury build, and we already know that Kurosawa is committed to the other farming items, so it's going to be back to dodging fights and spinning creep waves, trying to counteract the split push of the Nature's Prophet. But as we saw there, when the Nature's Prophet is this far ahead on itemization, the split push is really like half the battle, and it's the weak half. It's just there to force someone like Kurokawa to commit to a lane, to use a spell, to put something on cooldown, and then lo and behold, this team can easily find action on the other side of the map with Chestnut's hookshot, or some good scouting out from an invisible tree, and I'm sure we have the talent by now, yes we do, on Jay, and then you're left scrambling to keep up in a game where you're already behind in several ways. I'm almost surprised we haven't seen the rating go for Roshan yet. Perhaps they're waiting for another item on the Spectre. The Manta is done now, so that's the other item. If they do feel like this is their high ground timing, there's no reason they can't just drag things later. But I suppose the longer the game goes, I give credit. You give the Juggernaut time to catch up relatively. Like, even if you're behind 5,000 gold at 20 minutes, that's pretty bad. If you're behind 5,000 gold at 40 minutes, that's, often not even a real deficit given context. So there's some pressure to, make hay while the sun shines, but given the way the game 1 went, I'm sure that this ANU squad are pretty confident that they'll continue to outplay their opponents and hold this lead. We've now seen an Eternal Shroud up on Chestnut's Clockwork. This hero is so tanky. Just the crazy strength gain and armor it already possesses, paired with this very, very powerful personal defensive item against all the magic damage, including Kurosawa with the Maelstrom and Spin. That's mostly magic on this hero right now. This clock is just going to be unkillable, able to initiate on whoever and shut them down with that Orchid. We see the Haunt. It's going to be another defensive Haunt. How well can the Spectre slip away? Went to the Pit Lord in the bottom lane. The Pit is cast, but there's nowhere near enough damage here to finish off Haha. It's a defensive item built with Greaves, and in fact, I Love Clean Cole is going to try and convert this. The hasty TP out, that was smart thinking, at least was able to respond and not die. That would have been very humiliating to go down yourself in that position, but it shows how much this cat and mouse game is in favor of the Radiant right now. The global mobility on these heroes is devastating. When the Dire are trying to get favorable fights going on their terms, it's just nearly impossible. They can't pin down the Spectre for long enough to get the kill. Just simply manders off the silence, pops the haunt, goes to bot lane, and they nearly turn it into a kill. They do turn it into a tower, it looks like. Actually, no, they're kind of falling off this, so not immediately, but they are turning it into tower-taking position, and these heroes have to watch themselves as they line up to defend. It's a great hookshot, a double hookshot, in fact, and Chestnut, God, could you get any more of a flex, even uses the cogs to shovel the Lucy drop puck back into the waiting arms of the Batrider. Now, granted, that doesn't really work out. The Batrider goes down. It's great usage of spells to punish this dive by the Dire, and in fact, 3 heroes are suddenly dead. It turns out that might have been a little bit too deep. The wards are down in the middle of the fight. The Venomancer ultimate is popped, and this is what I meant about front-loading spells and damage, and the picks of the UC Stars adapting to Game 1. With the supports they had in Game 1, it's 100% a lost team fight. With the supports they have in Game 2, as long as Noodle gets these wards down, which thanks to the good defensive position he did right before he died, and the fight happens on top of these, as long as the Venomancer has any window to press R, that is a tough fight to stand in for the Radiant. You know, and as the fight goes on, the damage from those spells adds up. Those supports contribute despite their relative lack of net worth and their early death in the fight. And you see multiple Radiant cores going down, giving away a lot of their gold lead, in fact. Keith getting into the trash talk a little bit on this Batrider. Playing support Bat's pretty tricky. As we saw there, tries to go for the play on Lucy Drop, and Lucy Drop again kills him off. The play with the coil is just too strong. And I think Keith may have broken. I heard the coil snapping noise. I'm not sure whether that was when he died or whether there was burst damage from some other source there. But yeah, taking out the Batrider both in that fight and for an encore right afterwards, showing how fragile this hero is, you know. I guess this is the price of that dramatic last pick mid-Nature's Prophet for I Love Clean Coal, is you've kind of hung this Batrider out to dry. Your best case scenario is catching the Juggernaut during the spin, but that hasn't happened yet, and so instead we're seeing this hero take a couple of dives early. Speaking of, they go for another play on the Underlord, but the Underlord's very tanky, has the greaves this time again. A much harder kill than the heroes relatively were in Game 1. There's a healing ward doing a ton of work, and you know I Love Clean Coal would have loved to finish that, but he's already committed his TP scroll. He can't afford to end the cast, and so now the Dire, I mean, they're not going to lose this fight. Can they get Haha's Spectre? You're seeing the Spectre's power right now, but they look like they're much happier to kill off Chestnut. I talked about Chestnut being hard to kill, but when you're completely abandoned by your team against multiple enemy cores, the damage is there, and it might be there to kill Haha as well. We see Kurikau come back around now. Hasn't really built up any items since then, but feels confident with the team behind him. This Spectre is so tanky though, and now you're under the tower. It might be much. No! The Spectre's getting isolated, finished off by the damage from the spin. The Treant is not strong enough. The Nature's Prophet can't rejoin the fight. He went top. I think I Love Clean Coal might have made a mistake there. I'm assuming there was a teleport top, so you must have had the teleport cooldown available. Maybe just assumed that either the Spectre wouldn't fight or would get out of the fight. But, I mean, without the Haunt available, the Spectre doesn't really have a proper way to peel off those defensive heroes. It's been the strength of the Radiant reinforcements that's discouraged aggression from the Dire so far. And in the situation where the Prophet overextends and then utilizes his mobility to get out of the fight early, we see finally a mistake from ANU in the same sort of way that we were seeing from UC Stars in Game 1. Your super mobile mid laner is able to bail out of the fight, but then the rest of the team are just scraps for the wolves. And that must be such a great feeling, especially for Noodle and Pacifist, who've been, dying a lot in these games. Really, the whole Dire lineup have been struggling, and, I mean, their struggles may not be over as Chestnut respawns, teleports to the outpost, and guns down this Venomancer, basically on his own. Tiny assist from I Love Clean Coal at the end, actually taking the kill. But it's a proof of concept. If they bleed, we can kill them. If we can kill them, we can win. And they just killed basically the whole team. So that must feel pretty good. This won't feel good. The puck, finally the luck runs out in terms of countering the Batrider initiation. Gets the Treant Coil down, but not quickly enough to stop the lasso. And there's an Underlord here aiming to bail out the puck. But effortlessly, Chestnut just drops the power cogs on the high ground and blocks that Uber from getting into the building. No taxi ride back to the fountain. He has to just drive home alone, and that's unfortunate for your Underlord. You don't have that many big tactical contributions to make. That's pretty much the one, and you get iced out by a low cooldown W spell from Chestnut, who's just massively showing up in this whole series. Going for the Aghanims now, which is terrifying when the hero is this farmed. I wouldn't be surprised if this game somehow drags out to see a Bloodthorn build and kind of some auto-attack threat coming out here. Now you see Curacao going to jump on I Love Clean Coal. It's probably not a kill threat, but you're aiming to discourage the Prophet. The Spectre shows up. This might not have been such a good idea, actually. I Love Clean Coal was safely inside the trees with the damage from the spin running out and no vision to follow up, but some quick thinking from Curacao. He initiates the Omni Slash onto the Spectre next to the Sprout, and because Omni Slash provides vision in a very particular way, it allows him to splash that Omni onto the Nature's Prophet and finish that kill. And while he does go down in return, in terms of how much map control he gets and how behind their team still were, you almost give him credit for that. It baited out the Haunt as well. That was really quick thinking. And having just spent the whole game and a half singing the praises of the ANU lineup, I'm excited to see how this Juggernaut, how this Curacao, hero can influence the game now. He's spent all of that time trying to play catch-up Dota, and now he's really starting to come into a position where he can take control of the game as one of the more farmed, in fact the most farmed carry on the map. Again, the furious pace of this game settles. These two teams have been going almost 2 kills a minute for 90 minutes. The intensity's off the charts. Chestnut isn't willing to let it drop. He hook shots in, but this time, it shows you how much the game has changed. The hook shot finally fails to produce a kill on Noodle. There's multiple supports around him. They have multiple defensive items. He pops the Ghost Scepter. They pop the spells. They drive the clockwork back. Finally, blunting that aggression is such a big deal because it means that they can just hold on to their section of the map, and it lets their cores play a little bit away from their supports, which lets them farm more efficiently, gives Lucy drop away back into this game because this puck had started to kind of fall off and become more of a utility hero. It was basically the Carousel show, which is not how you want to be in the late game against multiple cores, including a Spectre. But Lucy Drop's play has been good enough that I believe that once these supports are self-sufficient and their vision is better, and we see now some really nice defensive wards coming up for the Dire all along the middle of the map, just holding down their farming space, we can see the puck recover and also make some really big teamfight winning plays. Might be making a teamfight starting play here as the Dire make an aggressive smoke. What can Lucy Drop do? They pop the smoke. It's broken on Chestnut. Really nice intuition as to where those heroes were. Pops the Blind Dream Coil and gets an immediate couple of kills. It's on the tree and the clockwork as well, so that's most of the enemy control gone. And as the Bat Rider burns the lasso just to hold Lucy Drop for a few seconds, that's all of their control gone. Now they turn on the Spectre because they know this is the exact situation they want. It's telling I Love Clean Coal isn't even coming to the teamfight. He's pushing down a tier 2 tower while his Spectre dies. That's a pretty miserable trade in anyone's books, but apparently it's the best that he thinks he can get. Doesn't even really make it to the high ground, and I don't think, if this is a committed strategy, a pre-committed strategy instead of a pessimistic reaction to some bad fights, I question the judgment here from ANU. I don't think, even with these items, that the Nature's Prophet backdoor is going to get the job done by itself this game. There's simply too many heroes on the Dire team who can effectively clear those treants, and the amount of damage he's got done so far to these buildings just isn't enough. Given their dominance in the game, there's probably some scenarios where you would be on their tier 3s right now threatening racks, but instead he's going to have to get the job done with hero kills, and that's a big one. They punish Lucy Drop in the top lane. The puck tried to initiate onto the Bat Rider for the nth time in this game, but they haven't had as much luck as Chestnut has in punishing enemy supports, especially when there's a Nature's Prophet who can just arrive and TP. Now, granted, additional Dire mobility is going to come back to try and block this push. Then they send home the squad with the Dark Rift, but most of the squad, not all of it. Kurokawa's kind of isolated here, and Keith does not have the lasso after that fight at top. That's the soul-saving grace. Kurosawa did not even spin TP, just press the button knowing that both of those heroes had him dead to rights, but Chestnut missed the hook shot, and the lasso had already been used, and so the carry slips away. Really critical escape there. And again, even with the kill on the puck, no real damage done to any tier 3 towers. So the Dire at least looking good in terms of holding their high ground here and forcing I Love Clean Coal to actually show up to the fights, be brave, and meet them 1-1 instead of, sneaky backdoor road to victory. Granted, there is more than one backdoor in Dota. You can always go through the Roche pit. That's one shortcut, and that's what the Radiant are taking right now. Haha will take the Aegis, has the Scardy up now on Spectre. That item progression kind of froze for a little while, given that the Nature's Prophet is going to naturally pushing out all these lanes, and that there's so many fights and a couple of deaths to boot. That's kind of really put a spanner in the game plan of the Radiant, because you would expect 35 minutes to be about the time, given the space he got early on, that Haha would be taking over the game. And instead, it's Curacao who's actually managed to farm all the way back up from the rough laning style he had, and not only contribute to these fights in a big way, but overtake and stay substantially ahead of the Spectre's net worth. So now there's kind of this extra window for the UC Stars team that I did not expect to have, they would have at the start of the game or 15 minutes into the game. Remains to be seen what they can do with the Juggernaut. The full Aghanim's up. He's going to deploy it onto Keith. Punishes the Batrider. Kills the Batrider. Blink. Omni Slash. Not a lot to do about that, regardless of who you are. And you know, actually, that wasn't even the full Omni. That was just the Swift Slash. It almost seemed like it lasted too long. But that's almost off cooldown already. That's the power of the Aghanims there. The minor Omni Slash is enough. You know, you don't even need the full Omni to get rid of a support like Bat. And Keith played a terrific Rubik in game 1. He's had moments here, but this is what happens when the support isn't as far ahead, and when the enemy cores are much better outfitted to destroy you. You can't just sit behind your team the whole game. He's looking a little bit more human. And so with the 45 advantage, the power play from the Dire comes through. They capture the enemy outpost, and they look to take a tier 2 off the map. Now, there's still a tier 1 for ANU in the top lane, but taking out this tier 2 does kind of at least even the stakes in terms of both teams having very dark map jungles. Possibly going to limit the Spectre's farm a little bit, or set up opportunities for aggressive plays on the heroes farming deep, instead of trying to catch out heroes like Batrider that are in the lanes and maybe a little bit worse risk reward. They smoke and Dark Rift home. This is a really sneaky use of the Underlord ultimate, but it's going to be scouted by Jay's Treant. Of course, he will become the first victim as a result, but probably for the best, because that could have been really bad for their team, and still might be. They lasso the Jug though, and they drag him to the high ground where I Love Clean Coal is laying in, has the Hex, now the Orchid. Kurakao's been isolated, but he survives for long enough. He gets the Omni off. They spread it to Keith, and he manages to isolate the Omni Slash. Only the Batrider dies. Uses the Ghost Scepter to buy time and slides away from his Nature's Prophet. Kurakao forced to escape, but it's a good escape. That shard, I questioned it, but given that the game is dragged out now, it's looking like a really smart decision. It saves his life there. It gets him deep enough into the jungle that I Love Clean Coal is forced to guess with the teleport and even the Sprout. Not enough to actually catch and punish the Jug. Now he's going to potentially heal up and TP back in, or at least run back towards the fight. There's a buyback from the Underlord to try and trap this Spectre's second life. The Aegis has now been burned. Chestnut is back and getting involved. He has that Ags available, so he can go and go and go. Has the overclocking to refresh his cooldowns and push out damage in the fights. But what about the disables out of this Dire side though? Chestnut's forced to completely retreat. The Juggernaut is back alive at full strength, and Noodle, who has been victimized for a game and a half, is laying down disable after disable onto this Spectre. The second most farmed Radiant hero is not contributing in the fights. There's a little bit of dispersion damage coming out, but these heroes are tanky now. They don't care, and the entire Radiant team essentially survives. Only the sacrificial Venomans are going down in that fight. Kuratao simply walks back into the fight, did not have to buy back as the Clockwork did, and that is huge economic damage done. It's still a 1,000 gold lead on the scoreboard in favor of ANU, but the balance of this game has thoroughly shifted, I believe, and UC Stars, they're looking really strong right now. Now, I Love Clean Coal, he's still the X factor. He picks off Noodle. He almost got the Juggernaut in that fight, which would have made things very different, but Lucy Drop, showing a lot of courage, is going to try and pick up this kill, or more like buy time for Kuratao to come in and participate in killing him. The extra long Aghanim's Dream Coil holds I Love Clean Coal in place, and now the puck gets aggressive. It's bought enough time. The long outpost TP arrives, and Kuratao is going to effortlessly waste that Nature's Prophet. Big revenge for the Dire side after I Love Clean Coal dominated the early game, dominated game 1. But now, you're seeing the realities of a hero like Nature's Prophet, even 6-slotted against a hero like Juggernaut. One is a carry, and the other is just a hero who farms a lot of gold. There's no defensive ability that can negate the Omni Slash. There's certainly not the kind of stats that can survive it, even with the extra armor from the Assault and the BKB charge to negate the magical component of the Omni from Mjolnir. And Kuratao just destroys that hero, and with this Blink is really in a position to continue destroying I Love Clean Coal and basically negating his impact. This has been a huge Nature's Prophet performance so far, full credit to I Love Clean Coal, but this is where it gets tricky, and you become really reliant on Chestnut and on Jay's Treant, who hasn't had as big a game, unfortunately, to try and protect you, because while you put out the damage of a carry hero and you can potentially get the drop on a Juggernaut with a Hex and an Orchid to kill him, you are going to need Disables to keep you alive and dishing out that damage. You just can't hold up to being really looked at the way a Cork could be were you on a different hero. Speaking of standing up to punishment, Tier 2 tower now removed. That's all. Outer tower's down for the Radiant, so I was joking about their Tier 1 top before, but that's evaporated in a real hurry. And Jay might go down even faster. Going to try and commit the Meteor Hammer, but that item's not looking too strong right now. I mean, it's cute because it kind of, lets you contribute to the team's overall split push. We've seen it on and off from Treant players over different patches. The idea, you've got this Blink Dagger, you have multiple nukes that are castable from the tree line, and you have Meteor Hammer as a nuke that can kill off towers without actually exposing you. But these heroes, as I said, this is a lineup that just passively, I don't know if the Radiant realized it, is really strong against that kind of slow, passive split push that the Nature's Prophet and the Treant are putting out. If you were split pushing with an anti-mage, the kind of hero that threatens to absolutely just jump on and annihilate any single defender, that would work much better here. We've already seen how vulnerable these heroes are to getting solo picked off. But, when you have when the Dire have this Juggernaut and this Puck, Chestnut's pretty vulnerable to getting picked off as well, and we already talked about him being one of the tankier heroes on the map, as they tip him after his death there. So, that threat goes both ways, and these heroes from the Radiant, they're not quite as threatening. Maybe if Noodle tries to solo defend a creep wave on the low ground, I Love Clean Coal can get plucky, teleport in, get that kill. But, against the Juggernaut, whoever, you have to really gamble a little bit to go for those kills. Mostly, they're going to be contributing a little bit of damage, a little bit of push from the sidelines and then falling back. And when you're up against 5 heroes with powerful counter-pushing abilities, that is just not good enough. And now their last outer tower is down. The Radiant are essentially in an even game in terms of this pushing war, and I don't know that they can even base race the Dire. Now, granted, if they get a good opening kill, as they just did on Lucy Drop, it looks like they kind of baited the Puck. A little bit of smarts coming into play as their item advantage begins to fall off. They bait the initiation, they bait the Dream Coil, and they heavily punish the Puck before the rest of the team can Dark Rift back. But Kuratao, he will not be denied. Manages to blink forward, gets the Swift Slash, actually wasn't the blink, just managed to get the Swift Slash off on Keith's Batrider. Now the Batrider is very quick, doesn't have the boots of travel, but just with that ninja gear, the plus 30 movement speed is good enough that it wastes a lot of time. In the end, will get run down because of course the Blink Dagger on the Juggernaut, not to mention the Puck, effortlessly keeps pace. This is a support Batrider, and without the boots of travel and all of the additional gewgaws that this hero is used to having, you're not quite as slippery as you'd want to be. There's even the extra move speed on the Jug Spin to help keep pace, but at least you're the only one to go down for your team. You bought a lot of time, and I can't really flame Keith for his play. But it still leaves UC Stars in full control of this map. Jay is going to be the next one caught. He blinks backwards and into the Juggernaut. There was no save route in the end, and the Treant is felled in short order. Monster kill now for this Jug. How did this happen? That's what ANU must be asking themselves. They had this game in such a vice-like grip. They were controlling every aspect of the map. They had the late game seemingly secured. Their mid laner was playing very clean Dota. And then their off laner was massive even. And now somehow this is all fallen apart. They've failed to quite coordinate their ganks the way they needed to. Maybe the split push game has actually worked against them, because unlike game 1, where they were simply always as 5 and it was easy to bring their extra network to bear, this has been a game where after the first 15 minutes or so, it's been UC Stars who have taken better advantage of this kind of diverse, spread out, split push gameplay, and now they take advantage of an Aegis. This Juggernaut is going to be even beefier. Surely he can hand off the cheese to a teammate. He's dumped his own boots for now, going to go for that Swift Blink upgrade that can kind of replace boots on a lot of carries. And I guess this is the logic now, eventually behind the Aghanims shard, is you really almost won't feel the loss of boots. You shuffle around with your team, you're okay having a little bit less move speed there, and then when you enter into the fight for real, you have the Swift Blink for a burst of move speed, as well as the spin, and that's going to be all you need. It's starting to flip scripts now to the point where I have to wonder how the Radiant come back into this. And, maybe I can apply whatever caster curse that I applied to them to UC Stars, because earlier on I was saying much the same thing about the Dire lineup, but I think it comes down to this haha Spectre, right? You're counting on the Spectre to dominate the late game, it took really maybe too long to get the items up. The early game build was so defensive and so conservative that I guess it ended up kind of nulling the advantage that the rest of the team worked so hard to create. You know, the Spectre had a ton of space to farm, but we're talking a Spectre farming with, like, Hood Blade Mail. You know, that's very slow creep hitting there. You know, and even with the team ahead, you kind of have to respect the potential of a smoke gank when you don't see the dire heroes, because you are ultimately just a Spectre out on the lane. Even when you get the Haunt to escape, as you sort of allowed yourself to do a couple of times, you know, you lose valuable farming time, you weaken yourself there. You almost question whether it ends up being worthwhile. Maybe you expected more early pressure to come out of the Dire when you committed to that build. But whatever the case, it's meant that now Kurosawa is 6,000 gold ahead of the Spectre. The lead's getting bigger, not smaller. And this Penta-Edged Sword is an even stronger neutral item than the Trickster's Cloak, currently possessed by Haha. They drag Kurosawa deep. Keith is going to tank the Omni Slash again, doing a great job now in the late game of trying to handle some of that immense Juggernaut damage. And Kurosawa, I mean, granted, this is with the Aegis, so he's mostly screening his team, and they're able to kill off Chestnut's Clockwork as a result. So that's a Clockwork trade for the Aegis. The Clockwork fires back, so both teams will be at effectively full strength. But this Juggernaut is a sitting duck. He respawns in the team. He gets Hex, loses half his hit points. Now he's silenced. Now he's cogged. Now he's dead. They bring down Kurosawa, so the Dire, after playing really tight Dota for a while, when it's their turn to go on the aggressive, they start to falter a little bit. It's a really good rally from the Radiant, from the ANU squad. They show their stuff, they disable the key heroes, and maybe you just needed to play a bit more conservatively with your Juggernaut Aegis. You needed to respect all of those disables that I thought would make the game so hard for him. They did finally, you know, show up in that fight. Just chain disable the Juggernaut, made his second life meaningless. I don't know if he needs a BKB, or whether he just needed to play closer to his team, but I would have thought that you would just be spin hitting the tier 3 tower and making them come to you. They get antsy, they dive deep, and they are thoroughly punished. Now, speaking of thoroughly punished, I love Clean Cole. He rotated to the top lane with a teleport to try and capitalize immediately, understanding this team probably can't afford to take too many team fights like that. They won't all be so good, but he is the one who gets punished there. Almost killed off the puck. In the end, Lucidrop gets him, but Clean Cole has a buyback, and the Juggernaut doesn't. Chestnut gets a double kill. Is that a double hookshot kill? No, he just kills off Pacifist. But that is massive, actually. That's a lane of racks, suddenly. The first lane of racks, we've kind of we've suddenly righted the tables, righted the script for this game to the direction it was running for so long, and just when it seemed like UC Stars were about to rally, their throne is under threat. I think they've scouted this Juggernaut has no buyback. Did he spend it or did he use it? He spent his gold. He has no buyback, even though it's off cooldown. And I can understand, like, when you're very behind, that's the kind of mindset you have. You need every ounce of your net worth to make even one life count, and you did have the Aegis, but again, if you bought out to utilize your Aegis, why would you spend it so deep in the enemy base? Because now, what it's cost you is the game, when you work so hard to come back. And that must be heartbreaking for UC. I mean, you can pat yourselves on the back, you can take the positives. Compared to game 1, that was a massively more even contest. But when you consider all the work that was done and how close they ended up making that, I can't help but see it as a missed opportunity, especially when it comes down to something that is 100% in your control. The Juggernaut, what did he buy here? He bought he ate his Ags, I guess? He bought an Ags recipe, perhaps. It was either upgrading from the Basher to the Abyssal is good, but upgrading from the Ags to the Eaten Ags actually leaves you with less stats. And while it makes sense as a way to contain the Aegis, I don't know, like, maybe you should have just left your boots in your backpack. Because if that costs you a buyback, and then you take that Aegis deep, and you get lassoed into the fountain, and you get isolated and killed, like, whether it was a miscalculation born of desperation, or simply not having sufficient respect for ANU's disables after you'd managed to, you know, put them off for so long, in the end, unfortunately, one mistake is all it takes to erase 30 minutes of hard work. So, credit to ANU, they rally there, they hold on to their hopes, they play to their outs. I love Clean Cole, that aggressive teleport and buyback turned out to be what they needed, understood the window that existed, forced the issue, and secure a 2-0, not without a stumble, but certainly without really harming, the perception that this is a very strong team as we head into future weeks of the season. Granted, that's our only series for tonight. It was a replay cast. I'll be back tomorrow with more games from the Australian Esports University League, presented by Chatime Australia. And thanks, of course, to all our sponsors, including AOC, Indomie, and Rig, as well as Chatime, for the opportunity to support these university players and give them the attention they deserve, as well as the opportunity to win some pretty great prizes down the road. That's a long way off, though, and that's all the Dota we have for tonight. So, as the Wandering Bard, I'll sign off for the next 24 hours.